Chapter 274, Dark Gold Treasure Chest. Chapter 274, Dark Gold Treasure Chest. The presence of a monster doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, Shifeng said, a bitter smile on his face as he looked at the three-headed wolf guarding the entrance of the crystal pathway. Crystal Warwolf, Lord Rank. Level 25. HP 300 000 300 000. Compared to a dungeon boss, a field boss of the same rank was much more powerful. Moreover, in order to counter Zerg tactics, God's domain had set it so that field bosses would have their combat power and HP increased in proportion to the number of players participating in the battle. Generally, the optimum number of players required to raid a Lord-ranked field boss was around 10 to 20, unless of course it was a special boss. However, judging from the appearance of the Crystal Warwolf before them, Shifeng felt that it should not be a special boss. In other words, at least 10 players were needed to raid this boss. To make matters worse, the Crystal Warwolf was a level 25 monster, while nobody in Shifeng's group had even reached level 20, the resulting level suppression would be dire. Of those present, aside from Shifeng, who had the Abyssal Blade, which allowed him to fully ignore this level suppression, only Aqua Rose possessed a piece of equipment with the Ignore Levels attribute. Even so, her equipment only allowed her to ignore up to 3 levels. Aqua Rose herself was only at level 17 right now, and a level suppression of 5 levels would not be easy for her to deal with. As for Fire Dance, there was nothing to say. Of course, every cloud had a silver lining. Since the boss guarding the crystal pathway was very strong, it meant that the things beyond the pathway was equally important. Moreover, Shifeng also discovered a treasure chest sitting beside the pathway. This treasure chest was a dark gold treasure chest, and Shifeng's heart burned with a fiery passion as he looked at it. The loot he could get from this dark gold treasure chest would be much better than the loot from the boss before him. We won't be able to defeat a level 20 lord with just the 3 of us alone, we'll need to call for reinforcements. Aqua Rose's eyes glowed with excitement when she looked at the Crystal Warwolf before her. It was extremely difficult for players to meet with a field boss. They would definitely make a huge profit after killing it. Not to mention, there was also the treasure chest the Crystal Warwolf was guarding. Following which, Aqua Rose temporarily logged off the game to contact Blackie, who was at the Zero Wing workshop, telling him to bring the main force of Zero Wing to the Purple Sun Mansion and enter the staircase to the basement, in order to meet up with them at the Forgotten Lands. Meanwhile, Shifeng ceaselessly observed the Crystal Warwolf and the surrounding terrain, trying to think of a strategy to raid the boss. 10 minutes later, Aqua Rose logged back into the game. How did it go? When will they be arriving? Shifeng asked. They're already at the Purple Sun Mansion. However, no matter what they tried, they can't seem to find the entrance to this map, Aqua Rose said, slight disappointment showing on her face. If so, the appearance of the entrance should be random, Shifeng said, lapsing into silent contemplation. After a while, he shifted his sights to the Crystal Warwolf and added, "It seems we can only depend on ourselves to defeat this boss." Hearing Shifeng's conclusion, both Aqua Rose and Fire Dance immediately thought that Shifeng had gone insane. He was actually suggesting they deal with this Crystal Warwolf before them. They had neither an MT nor a healer in the party right now. With just 3 damage dealers, how were they supposed to deal with a level 25 Lord-ranked boss that had a height of over 10 meters? Although both girls knew of Shifeng's unrivaled strength, a Lord-ranked boss was still not something that could be defeated with just 3 players. We are only giving it a try. In any case, we can't just stay stuck in this place forever, right? Moreover, even if we do die, it is a good chance to check whether or not we can actually leave this place after dying. We'll be killing 2 birds with 1 stone, Shifeng joked. Guild leader, you decide what we should do, then, Fire Dance said with high spirits. Aqua Rose sighed helplessly. All right, then. I'll join in as well. We can't just fight this Crystal Warwolf head-on, the only choice we have is to kite it. I'll act as bait. Aqua Rose, you'll be the main damage dealer. Fire Dance, you'll be responsible for restricting its movements as much as possible. After some consideration, Shifeng settled on this strategy. Although he could no longer equip the Heavenly Dragon's Breath, his agility was still over 200 points. Moreover, His equipment also provided additional movement speed. His movement speed was definitely faster than a level 25 lord. Combining those with his keen reactions, out of the 3 players in the party, he was definitely the most suited to be the bait. Following which, Chiffon gave Fire Dance plenty of basic frost grenades and intermediate frost grenades, letting her use them as she saw fit. Fire Dance never thought Chiffon would possess such good items. With the frost grenades, Chiffon would have a much higher chance of success at kiting the boss. After the 3 of them were in position, Chiffon retrieved the blazing meteor from his waist. Standing at a distance of 40 yards from the crystal warwolf, Chiffon aimed the throwing weapon at the boss and threw it. Shoo! The blazing meteor streaked through the air and pierced the crystal warwolf's eye, causing -651 damage to it. Compared to a one-handed sword, Chiffon's damage with the throwing weapon was much higher. Ayo! The crystal warwolf let out an agonized wail. With bloodshot eyes, the crystal warwolf glared at the direction where the throwing weapon came from. As a result of its actions, however, the blazing meteor, which was still lodged in its eye, damaged the visual organ even further, causing an additional burst of -1,300 damage. The crystal warwolf was utterly angered now, and using its powerful hind legs, it leaped and charged at Chiffon. Immediately, Chiffon turned around and ran. Everything was just like Chiffon had guessed. His speed was just a tad faster than the crystal warwolf's. However, in order to avoid having Aqua Rose's and Fire Dance's aggro on the boss exceed his, which would in turn lead to the crystal warwolf attacking the 2 girls, Chiffon needed to constantly send attacks at the boss to strengthen his aggro on it. As a result, the crystal warwolf would oftentimes catch up and attack him. The crystal warwolf's attacks were extremely powerful. A single swipe from its paws could easily shatter the floor, resulting in fist-sized rubble flying everywhere. Fortunately, Chiffon always managed to nimbly evade the crystal warwolf's razor-sharp claws at the very last second, before pulling away from the boss and attacking it once more. Chiffon's attacks were only meant as a provocation. Aqua Rose was the true damage dealer this time around. After the Demon's Castle raid, Aqua Rose had 2 dark gold ranked items on her person. Of the 2, one was even a dark gold ranked staff of the finest quality. Aqua Rose's damage right now was already considerably high. If not for Blackie outshining her with the epic ranked Mavis's guard, Aqua Rose would definitely have the highest single output damage in the guild. As Chiffon ran around the perimeter with the crystal warwolf chasing after him, Aqua Rose stood in the center and blasted frost arrows and frost spears on the crystal warwolf's body. Not only could these spells reduce movement speed, each of these spells also dealt over -500 damage to the boss. If not due to the level suppression of 5 levels, her spells would definitely deal over -800 damage. Fortunately, unlike Chiffon who could only attack intermittently, Aqua Rose could attack continuously and deal a constant stream of damage to the boss. On the other side, Fire Dance kept inflicting the bleeding debuff and using poisons that reduced movement speed on the boss. With the 2 movement speed reduction effects stacked together, the crystal warwolf slowed down significantly. Also, whenever the crystal warwolf got too close to Chiffon, Fire Dance would immediately throw a frost grenade at the boss, freezing it. However, as the crystal warwolf was a lord-ranked boss, the freezing effect of the frost grenades was greatly diminished, lasting no more than 3 seconds, sometimes it lasted for only 1 short second. However, when experts exchanged moves, it took only an instant to reach a conclusion, so 1 second was more than enough for Chiffon to pull a great distance away from the boss. Although the 3 of them dealt only a small amount of damage, the HP of the crystal warwolf continuously rose and fell. After more than a dozen minutes passed, the crystal warwolf had only 30% of its 300,000 HP remaining. By simple estimates, the boss would die in less than 10 minutes. Ayo! The crystal warwolf went berserk. Just like a deflated balloon, its towering body, which was over 10 meters in height, suddenly shrank. Within moments, the boss became much smaller than it was before. Not good. This is the type of berserk that discards power for speed. Chiffon had encountered plenty of such bosses in the past. Hence, the moment he witnessed the crystal warwolf's transformation, he immediately recognized the boss for what it was. Fire Dance, keep on using the frost grenades to slow it down. Understood. Fire Dance knew that this was a crucial period. Hence, she tossed out the frost grenades in her hands one after another without pause. However, something unexpected happened. Aside from the frost grenades dealing much less damage than before, both their movement speed reduction and freezing effects were completely useless against the boss. In the blink of an eye, the shrunken crystal warwolf appeared before Shifeng. It brandished its claws. Its 3 heads bared the fangs in its mouths, and it bit down at him. Although Shifeng managed to deftly evade the 3 jaws clamping down on him, he failed to evade one of the paws that quickly followed. Suddenly, Shifeng's entire person was sent flying for more than 10 yards, and a frightening damage of more than -2,100 appeared above his head. Shifeng felt as if his chest had caved in when he received the attack. Shifeng's HP instantly fell to a dangerous level, his previously green HP bar turning into a bright red. Chapter 275 – 7 Luminaries Key. Chapter 275 – 7 Luminaries Key. The moment Shifeng landed on the ground, the crystal warwolf arrived at his back like a savage gale. Without giving Shifeng any chance to defend, the 3 heads of the crystal warwolf opened their jaws to bite down on Shifeng. Guild leader Fire Dance was greatly shocked. Immediately, she closed in on the crystal warwolf, sending a 3-star kidney strike to its body. However, even a controlling skill like kidney strike had no effect on the crystal warwolf. Just as the fangs of the crystal warwolf were about to close on Shifeng's head, Shifeng managed to cross his swords and execute parry in the nick of time. Boom! The floor beneath Shifeng instantly cracked from the force. What a strong fellow, Shifeng laughed bitterly. Although parry allowed players to block the physical damage of an attack, it did not neutralize the force of the impact. There was no healer in the party right now. If Shifeng ate another attack, he would definitely lose his life. From this brief exchange, Shifeng had also gotten a general understanding of how much more powerful the crystal warwolf had become. In Shifeng's estimation, although the crystal warwolf had not received much of an increase in terms of strength, its current speed was at least 30% faster than before it went berserk. At this moment, only by equipping the Heavenly Dragon's Breath could Shifeng have a chance at grasping victory. Otherwise, he would only receive unilateral abuse from the boss. Unfortunately, although reaching 200 points in agility was a simple task, it was not easy for a swordsman like Shifeng to attain 120 points in intelligence. Moreover, very few plate armor equipment meant for swordsmen had the intelligence attribute on it. Those that did would be considered garbage equipment. Seeing that its attack had failed to kill its prey, the crystal warwolf immediately rotated its body, its diamond-like tail whipping at Shifeng as it did so. As parry was still on cooldown, Shifeng had no choice but to activate one of his life-saving skills, Defensive Blade. Defensive Blade was currently at level 4, and it protected Shifeng from 9 ranged attacks or 4 melee attacks. Defensive Blade was a skill that provided complete immunity to any attack, be it damage or the resulting impact. It was one of the must-have basic combat skills for swordsmen. As for why Shifeng had chosen to use parry first instead of Defensive Blade, it was for the sole purpose of determining the combat power of the Berserk Crystal Warwolf. Only by experiencing the force of the impact could Shifeng make the best judgment. Meanwhile, the conclusion Shifeng arrived at was to face the Crystal Warwolf head-on. If he tried to escape, he would only die faster. Following which, he raised the abyssal blade up in the air. Green electric arcs surrounded the body of the sword as it moved to meet with the snowy, sharp claws of the Crystal Warwolf. Thundering flash. The green electric arcs pierced the Crystal Warwolf's body, causing -572, -1,623, and -1,204 damage to it. Although only 1 out of the 3 arcs achieved a critical hit, the attack also managed to trigger the curse of the Abyssal Blade, inflicting the Doom Curse on the Crystal Warwolf. Immediately, all of the Crystal Warwolf's attributes were reduced by 20%. Suddenly, the Berserk Crystal Warwolf that had had its agility increased by 30% was weakened greatly. However, Shifeng was still not done with his attacks. He activated Phantom Kill right away, his doppelganger appearing beside the Crystal Warwolf. Shortly after, Shifeng's doppelganger started sending a barrage of attacks at the Crystal Warwolf as well. Although the doppelganger only had 50% of Shifeng's attributes, it had fully inherited the skills Shifeng had learned. Yet, despite having greatly reduced the crystal werewolf's speed, Shifeng still did not have an easy time evading its attacks. Having no other choice, Shifeng activated gravity liberation. Shifeng's body instantly became as light as a feather, and like a spirited monkey, he dodged the originally unavoidable attack. Wind blade. Immediately, Shifeng's attack speed increased even further. Double chop. Earth splitter. Thunder flame explosion. Skills blasted on the crystal werewolf one after another, each dealing over -1000 damage. Although the crystal werewolf's attacks became stronger and its speed much faster after going berserk, these improvements came at the price of its defense being weakened. Combined with the 20% damage amplification effect of Thundering Flash, the damage the crystal werewolf received became a lot higher than before. Fire Dance's and Aqua Rose's attacks also landed at this point, so the crystal werewolf's HP fell sharply. By the time the 30-second duration of gravity liberation was almost over, the crystal werewolf only had 10% of its HP remaining. Just as the effect of gravity liberation was about to end, Shifeng executed 9 Dragon's Slash. 9 phantoms of the abyssal blade appeared behind Shifeng, and all of them shot towards the crystal werewolf. Meanwhile, just as an attack from the crystal werewolf was about to land on Shifeng, Shifeng swapped positions with his doppelganger. Upon being relocated, the doppelganger immediately used parry and defensive blade to repel the crystal werewolf's attacks. Each phantom of the abyssal blade had high attack power, and each of them could deal over -150 damage every time they struck at the crystal werewolf. In total, the 9 phantoms dealt over -1300 damage to the crystal werewolf every second. Meanwhile, there were 28 seconds before the effect of 9 Dragon's Slash ended. After having used up both of its life-saving skills, parry and defensive blade, the doppelganger received a direct hit from the crystal werewolf's claws. Alas, the doppelganger only had 50% of Shifeng's attributes, so it died on the spot. However, the doppelganger had earned a lot of time for Shifeng. With the doppelganger gone, the crystal werewolf shifted its attention back to Shifeng's actual body. Shifeng activated Wind Walk again without hesitation. He then whirled around and ran. Fortunately, with his movement speed increased by 30%, Shifeng was still a tad faster than the crystal werewolf, which was still under the 20% attribute reduction effect of the Doom Curse. Thus, the kiting strategy began once more. Under Aqua Rose's and Fire Dance's constant barrage, the crystal werewolf's HP fell lower and lower. 9%. 8%. 7%. By the time the effect of Shifeng's Windwalk was about to end, the crystal werewolf only had 3% of its HP remaining. It should be about time. At this moment, Shifeng stopped running. He then turned to face the crystal werewolf, pointing the abyssal blade at the monster. Abyssal bind. 9 snake-like chains suddenly surfaced from the floor, instantly binding the crystal werewolf. Although the crystal werewolf had been immune to the control skills used on it before, its movements were still bound by the pitch-black chains. In God's domain, the so-called immunity to control skills did not necessarily make one immune to all control skills. Instead, it simply made one immune to control skills that were below a certain tier. Skills such as Frost Arrow, Ice Sphere, and Kidney Strike were all considered basic skills. In other words, they were Tier 0 skills. As these skills were of the lowest tier, the crystal werewolf was completely immune to their effects. As a level 25 lord, the crystal werewolf was immune to any control skills that was below Tier 2. However, Tier 2 or Tier 3 control skills could still restrain it. Although Shifeng did not know which tier the abyssal bind belonged to, it was a skill attached to a magic weapon. In Shifeng's estimation, it should be at least Tier 3 or above, meaning that it would be effective against all bosses that could possibly appear at this stage of the game. With the crystal werewolf completely restrained, Shifeng took a step forward as he activated his ultimate skill, Flame Burst, which could only be used around once every 4 minutes. Shifeng's 2 swords were just like miniature suns with the activation of Flame Burst. In the blink of an eye, Shifeng slashed the crystal werewolf's body 6 times with his swords. -2238, minus 4,452, minus 2,198, minus 2,212, minus 4,408, -2,216. The 6 attacks dealt a total of more than minus 17,000 damage, instantly wiping away the Crystal Warwolf's remaining 3% HP. System: Level 25 Crystal Warwolf killed. Level difference of 7. EXP obtained increased by 700%. Obtained 485,630 EXP. The experience bars of all 3 of them instantly increased by a large chunk. Aqua Rose even advanced to level 18. As for Shifeng, he had only recently reached level 18, so he was still at level 18 even after killing the Crystal Warwolf. If he could kill several more of such Lord rank bosses, he would definitely level up very quickly. I never thought a Lord ranked boss could be killed in such a way as well. This battle was an eye-opener for Aqua Rose. In truth, however, if not for Shifeng being capable of holding a stable aggro on the Crystal Warwolf, in addition to consistently evading its multitude of attacks, they definitely could not have killed it. Guild leader, quickly check the loot. As a huge fan of Shifeng, Fire Dance was not surprised by Shifeng's ingenuity. She had always believed Shifeng could lead them to victory. Moreover, Fire Dance was hoping to reach Shifeng's standards one day. How could she allow herself to falter when faced with a Lord-ranked boss? Shifeng nodded in reply, promptly going ahead and checking the loot left behind by the Crystal Warwolf. It can't be, right? How could this boss be so cheap? How could it drop only 1 key and 1 piece of equipment? Aqua Rose immediately grew unhappy when she saw the information shared by Shifeng. What was even more annoying was that the equipment dropped was only a level 20 fine gold ranked plate armor wrist guard. It wasn't even dark gold rank. Not bad. Don't forget that this 7 luminaries key can be used up to 3 times to open a dark gold treasure chest. Isn't there a dark gold treasure chest right before us? Shifeng laughed. After Aqua Rose had followed Shifeng for some time, unconsciously, her standard for judging items became much higher than before. If it was in the past, Aqua Rose would definitely have forgotten herself in joy if she saw a fine gold equipment. Now, however, unless an item was of dark gold rank, it would not even pique her interest. That's right. Aqua Rose shifted her sights towards the distant treasure chest. After the arduous battle, the existence of this dark gold treasure chest had completely slipped her mind. They could get a dark gold equipment at the very minimum if they opened this treasure chest. There was also a small chance for them to obtain an epic ranked item. Epic ranked items. Aqua Rose did not dare to even hope for one. Chapter 276, Dragonscale Set Equipment. Chapter 276, Dragonscale Set Equipment. It's locked, as expected. No matter how hard Shifeng tried, he could not open the dark gold treasure chest. Hence, he retrieved the key he had just obtained from his bag. Kachak. The lid of the purple gold-colored treasure chest popped open slightly. Multicolored lights escaped between the gap, the lights illuminating even areas that were several hundred yards away. If this treasure chest had been opened out in the fields, it would definitely cause a huge commotion and attract many players to come and snatch it. Fortunately, there was only Shifeng's group of 3 in the Forgotten Lands. After the multicolored lights faded away, Shifeng reached into the treasure chest. However, he quickly discovered there were only very few items inside it. The treasure chest contained a total of 3 items. Of them, 2 were dark gold equipment, while 1 was a forging manual. The 2 dark gold equipment were the crystal armor and the boots of extreme speed. Crystal armor, chest piece, plate armor, dark gold rank. Level 20. Equipment requirement, strength 120, agility 140. Defense plus 140. Strength plus 24, agility plus 21, endurance plus 20. Restricted to swordsman. Additional passive skill dash. Smart Outbreak. Every time user receives damage, strength and agility increased by 2% for 15 seconds. Stacks up to 5 times. Although the basic attributes on this piece of equipment could only be considered at the level of being good, the passive skill that was attached to it was simply amazing. After all, The passive skill could potentially increase a player's strength and agility by 10%. If the wearer of the crystal armor originally had high amounts of strength and agility, the additional attributes provided by Smart Outbreak would be like having equipped an additional piece of equipment at the very least. The only downside to this passive skill was its need for the user to take damage up to 5 times. Although such a condition had made it relatively useless in boss battles, when used in grinding monsters and PK, it would definitely provide the wearer of the crystal armor with unspeakable advantages. Boots of extreme speed, shoes, leather armor, dark gold rank. Level 20. Equipment requirement, strength 90, agility 130. Defense plus 143. Strength plus 20, agility plus 26, endurance plus 18. Movement speed plus 10. Evasion plus 7. Additional passive skill dash. Rapid movement, increases movement speed by 12% and agility by 8%. In regard to assassins and rangers, the most sought-after attribute for these two classes was agility, followed by strength. Meanwhile, this pair of boots increased the wearer's agility to the extremes. One could even argue that no other level 20 dark gold ranked shoes could increase agility as much as the boots of extreme speed could. Although these two pieces of dark gold equipment were excellent, they were worth barely a fragment of the true value of this dark gold treasure chest. After all, the item that reflected the true value of the dark gold treasure chest was none other than the forging manual. In addition, it was even a fine gold ranked forging manual. Forging manuals were different from forging designs. In the case of forging designs, only one particular piece of equipment could be made using it. In the case of forging manuals, however, an entire set of equipment could be made using it. This forging manual was meant to produce the level 20 dragon scale set equipment. There were a total of 6 pieces in this set, and it could be worn by any class that could use plate armor. Previously, Shifeng had spent over 100 gold at the Blackwing auction house just to purchase the forging design for the Arclight shield. However, the value of the Arclight shield was far from being comparable to the dragon scale set equipment. After all, the dragon scale set equipment was a fine gold ranked set equipment. Throughout the entire Star Moon Kingdom, not a single guild had managed to obtain a secret silver ranked set equipment up to now. One could simply imagine the value of a fine gold ranked set equipment. If Shifeng could forge a few sets of the dragon scale set equipment and give them to the plate armor classes in the guild's main force, when these players walked on the streets wearing the dragon scale set equipment, one could simply imagine the shock on the other players' faces when they see the set equipment. The members of other guilds would definitely tremble with fear. Just the thought of such a scene was simply exhilarating. However, it would definitely be extremely difficult to forge the dragon scale set equipment. As it was a set equipment, the difficulty of producing the entire set would be no less than producing a piece of dark gold equipment. Shifeng was only an advanced forging apprentice right now. Without raising his forging level, producing the dragon scale set equipment would only be a pipe dream. At the very least, he needed to get promoted to an intermediate forger or advanced forger before he had an actual chance of producing the dragon scale set equipment. I have to raise my forging levels after we return. Shifeng formed a plan in his mind as he looked at the dragon scale forging manual. Shifeng then handed the boots of extreme speed to Fire Dance. Now that Fire Dance had reached level 19, she was only a short distance away from level 20. As for the crystal armor and dragon scale forging manual, he kept both of them for himself. After resting for a short while, Shifeng's group of 3 entered the crystal pathway. The crystal pathway was so long that one could not see the end of it in a single glance. Moreover, the elemental mana present in this pathway was extremely dense, so much so that it was even visible in the form of an aurora. It was an absolutely stunning sight to behold. Aside from being visually appealing, the dense mana also gave the 3 of them a buff, increasing the magic damage they could deal by 300%. One could simply imagine how dense the elemental mana was in this pathway. Before they knew it, Shifeng's group of 3 had walked for more than an hour inside this crystal pathway. When they finally emerged, they were at the base of a huge mountain. When the 3 of them laid eyes on this mountain, they were immediately stunned. This entire mountain can't be made out of 7 luminaries crystal, right? Aqua Rose stared at the crystal mountain, her heart filled with immense shock. Aqua Rose had previously visited the Blackwing auction house, so she had seen 7 luminaries crystal before. It was common knowledge that the 7 luminaries crystal was one of the best mana-conducting crystals in God's domain. Not only was it extremely rare, its price was even more impressive. Not even White River City, a city with a population of several million, was qualified to use such a precious commodity. Throughout the entire Starmoon Kingdom, only the Palace and Starmoon auction house at the capital city could afford to use a floating platform made out of 7 luminaries crystal. Previously, Aqua Rose had believed that the crystal pathway was actually made out of mana crystals. However, the sight of this large mountain and its surrounding environment overturned her previous assumptions. The reason being, it was simply impossible for mere mana crystals to fill their surroundings with such dense elemental mana, resulting in even the formation of 7-colored mana clouds. It should be. Shifeng nodded blankly. Shifeng's mind grew heated at the thought of having so much 7 luminaries crystal. On the market, a 7 luminaries crystal the size of a small residential house could be used to purchase a large town with a population of 50,000, with plenty to spare. Meanwhile, the 7 luminaries crystal before him was in the form of a mountain, and in terms of size, this mountain could rival even White River City. A city made entirely of 7 luminaries crystal. Just what sort of concept was this? Even if the entire Starmoon Kingdom was sold, it would not be enough to purchase so much 7 luminaries crystals. Unfortunately, none of these crystals could be taken away. It was not even possible to pick some to take back. If they wished to mine these 7 luminaries crystals, at the very least, they needed to reach master level in mining. Shifeng was only at basic apprentice level in mining right now, and not even in his dreams could he mine these 7 luminaries crystals. 7 luminaries crystal was even more valuable than gold. Yet, even though so much 7 luminaries crystals were sitting right before him, he could do nothing but look at it. Shifeng's heart simply bled at this thought. However, this couldn't be helped. Who would have ever thought there would be so much 7 luminaries crystals at this place? Shifeng shook his head, banishing his thoughts. He then moved his sights towards a flight of stairs a short distance away that led to the peak of the mountain, saying, "Let's go up and take a look. We might discover how to unseal this place up there." Fire Dance did not know the true value of 7 luminaries crystal, hence she barely reacted to it. She had simply been mesmerized by the beauty of this mountain. Aqua Rose, on the other hand, knew full well the value of this mountain. If Fire Dance had not given her a shove, rousing her from her stupor, Aqua Rose would definitely still be immersed in her shock. After all, this entire mountain was a mountain of money. If she could nick even a tiny piece of this mountain, the coins converted from it would be enough to sustain even a first-rate guild for a long time. As the trio traversed the stairs up the mountain, Shifeng suddenly felt an oppressive pressure bearing down on him. Moreover, this pressure was exactly the same as what he had felt at the Purple Sun Mansion, only a lot more powerful. The pressure only grew stronger and stronger as they climbed further up the mountain. By the time Shifeng arrived at the mountaintop, he was already drenched in sweat. His body also felt extremely heavy, as if it were made out of lead. Meanwhile, the 2 girls, Fire Dance and Aqua Rose, fared much worse than Shifeng. At this moment, both girls were sprawled on the ground, their bodies refusing to move even an inch. Unable to help his teammates, Shifeng decided to walk towards a monolith visible at a distance by himself. Just by looking at this semi-transparent sky-blue monolith, Shifeng could immediately sense that it was the heart of this land. It was obvious that this standing stone was the thing that filled the surrounding environment with such dense elemental mana, and not the mountain-sized 7 luminaries crystal. Arriving before the monolith, Shifeng discovered many golden divine runes engraved on the bottom of the standing stone. They were by far the most complicated divine runes Shifeng had ever seen. Also, Shifeng had actually discovered a figure flickering in and out of existence within the semi-transparent monolith. When Shifeng took a closer look at this figure, his eyes immediately widened in shock. He simply couldn't believe what he was seeing was real. The reason being, Shifeng had seen the figure inside the stone before. However, Shifeng was confused. Why would this person appear here? Chapter 277, A God's Grave. Chapter 277, A God's Grave. While Shafong was still in a daze, Fire Dance and Aqua Rose caught up with him, having recovered from their exhaustion. Guild leader, did you find anything? Fire Dance asked out of curiosity when she saw Shafong lost in thought. Aqua Rose, on the other hand, did not notice any difference in Shafong's demeanor, because the moment she arrived before the monolith, her attention was completely caught by something else. As an elementalist, she was much more sensitive to magic power than players of other classes. The frightening magic power radiating from the monolith was definitely the purest form of magic power Aqua Rose had ever felt, as if it was the master of all elemental mana. When Aqua Rose noticed the figure inside the monolith, she, too, froze on the spot. How is it possible? Aqua Rose could not believe what she saw. She rubbed her eyes, thinking they were playing tricks on her. Aqua Rose's reaction baffled Fire Dance. What has gotten into the two of you? Fire Dance looked at Aqua Rose, then at Shafong, confused by their reactions. You'll understand after taking a look inside the monolith, Shafong said slowly, pointing towards the figure in the monolith. Fire Dance then transferred her gaze to the monolith. How could she be here? Fire Dance asked in shock. Fire Dance knew the figure in the monolith. Moreover, she had met this person only recently. This person was none other than Charlene, the divine official who faced off against the two fallen angels back at the demon's castle. To be precise, the woman within the monolith looked exactly the same as Charlene. Even the saintly aura she emitted was similar to Charlene's. If Fire Dance had to point to a difference between the two women, then it would be the pressure this woman gave off. This was no longer an oppression due to strength. Instead, this pressure was the instinctive reverence for a primordial life form, just like the reverence mortals had towards gods. Could she possibly be a god? Fire Dance suddenly had this thought when she looked at the woman who looked like Charlene. Shafong's thoughts were running along similar lines to Fire Dance's. However, Shafong could say with certainty that the woman inside the monolith was definitely a Tier 6 god, because in the past he had personally experienced this overbearing pressure, which could only be exuded by a god. If the woman in the monolith was simply a Tier 6 god, Shafong would not have found the matter too shocking. After all, during his decade of playing God's Domain, he had personally met with plenty of Tier 6 players and NPCs. The thing that truly startled him was the fact that the woman before him looked identical to Charlene. Back at the Purple Sun Mansion, he had already experienced this kind of pressure. He had simply forgotten where he had felt it before. Now he knew why that pressure felt so familiar. After all, he had felt a similar pressure from Charlene. Only, the pressure Charlene gave off was not as powerful as the one he felt at the Purple Sun Mansion, hence he failed to recognize it. Not only did the two women look exactly the same, even the pressure they emitted felt similar. The only real difference between the two were their actual strengths. If Shafong was told that the woman before him was Charlene, he would definitely not believe it. After all, Charlene was only a Tier 3 divine official. She was still miles away from becoming a Tier 6 god. Yet, if he was told that Charlene had no connection to this woman before him, then he likewise would not believe it. Although the woman inside the monolith was clearly no longer alive, at the end of the day, she was still a god. As long as her body did not receive any intentional damage, it would not undergo any decay. As of now, Shafong finally realized that the Forgotten Lands was merely the grave of a god. However, he was still curious about who had actually created this masterpiece. This great personage had actually made such a complex magic array that utilized a god's body as its power source. The materials used to create the magic array even included the extremely valuable 7 Luminaries crystal. Just what kind of thing was this great personage trying to seal? Even if it was for the purpose of sealing a god, there should not be a need for so much resources. It seems there is a deep connection between Charlene and this place. Shafong had long since felt that Charlene's origins were not simple. The fact that she was a Tier 3 NPC was already amazing in and of itself. Charlene was also capable of handing out an epic quest to Shafong. Now, there was even a god that looked exactly the same as Charlene. Even Shafong could not fathom Charlene's true identity. Unless he went and asked Charlene herself. Shifeng was extremely curious about this matter. He vowed to himself to visit Charlene, who was at the stargazing tower at Blackwing City, after this entire ordeal was over. Guild leader, what are we supposed to do now? Destroy this monolith? Aqua Rose asked. The mana source of this magic array clearly originated from this monolith. If they wished to release the seal on the Forgotten Lands, their only choice was to destroy the monolith. However, it was unknown what sort of reaction they would incur if they did so. There was a god inside the monolith, after all. Let's give it a try. Shifeng had taken a look at the monolith's surroundings just now. However, he did not discover any mechanisms that would allow him to undo the magic array. After Shifeng nodded, Fire Dance immediately took action by slashing at the monolith with her 2 daggers. However, the 2 fine gold-ranked daggers, which could easily cut through metal like a hot knife through butter, simply grazed the surface of the monolith, creating dazzling sparks in the process. There was not even a mark left on the monolith. Hard. Fire Dance's hands went numb from the attack. It felt as if her daggers had hit God's steel. I'll try using magic. Aqua Rose started chanting the incantation for Chain Explosion. With the elemental mana so dense in this place, any spells used here would be greatly enhanced. Originally, Chain Explosion would only summon 5 fireballs, each the size of a wash bowl. When Aqua Rose cast the spell now, however, the fireballs grew to the size of a small house. When these fireballs bombarded the monolith, they were like meteors hurtling down from the sky. Sparks flew in all directions as the fireballs crashed into the monolith. After the flames subsided, Aqua Rose was greatly shocked by the result. The monolith remained completely unscathed. On the contrary, it even looked more brilliant and dazzling than before. Shifeng wrinkled his brows at this sight. If even Aqua Rose's ultimate move could not deal any damage to the monolith, he would most likely end up with a similar result if he tried to attack the monolith. Since we can't destroy the monolith, we'll need to use some other method to destroy the magic array, Shifeng said. The main god system would not hand out a quest that players had no hope of actually completing. If they couldn't destroy the power source of the magic array nor the magic array itself, then there was only one other thing they could destroy. The connection points. Aqua, help me look for the connection points of this magic array, Shifeng said. I see. Aqua Rose immediately understood Shifeng's intention. Fire Dance, however, remained clueless after the two's brief conversation. As an assassin, she knew next to nothing about magic. Hence, she could only stay by the monolith's side as she watched her 2 friends hard at work. Meanwhile, Shifeng and Aqua Rose started searching the surroundings of the monolith for the veins that carried magic power to the 5 modules of the magic array. Only by looking for veins could they locate the connection points. Normally, the quickest way to destroy a magic array was to destroy its power core. If that was not viable, then the 2 other remaining options would be to destroy the magic array itself and to destroy the connection points of the magic array. Destroying the magic array itself was an extremely challenging task to pull off. On the other hand, it was a very simple task to destroy the connection points. Unfortunately, locating these connection points was also a very difficult task. A connection point was a node that connected the magic array to its power source. It acted similar to a circuit breaker in real life. Only, instead of being used to prevent an overflow of electric current, the connection point served to limit the amount of mana flowing from the power source to the magic array. If the connection point was damaged, then the mana supply would surge, and consequently, the magic array would destroy itself due to excessive mana input. After searching for some time, Shifeng finally found a connection point. He promptly struck down with the abyssal blade, destroying the connection point. However, this enormous and complex magic array did not possess only a single connection point. They needed to search and destroy all the connection points of the magic array. After several more hours passed, Aqua Rose found another connection point, which she quickly destroyed. Even so, the magic array remained stable. In this way, Shifeng and Aqua Rose spent the entire day destroying more than 20 connection points. Although the destruction of the connection points had a slight effect on the magic array, it was clear that the damage was within the parameters of the magic array's design. Not good. Guild leader, one of the connection points you previously destroyed is back to normal. Having nothing better to do, Fire Dance had tagged along with Shifeng, hoping to learn how she, too, could search for the connection points. However, during her observations, she suddenly discovered that one of the connection points Shifeng had previously destroyed had actually recovered. "What did you say?" Shifeng asked in disbelief. Even the connection points could restore themselves. Shifeng started to suspect that this was no longer an ordinary magic array but a magic array that had already cultivated into a demon. Shifeng had seen plenty of Tier 5 magic arrays in the past, he had even seen Tier 6 magic arrays before. However, he had never once heard of a magic array that was capable of repairing itself. Chapter 278, The Great Catastrophe. Chapter 278, The Great Catastrophe. By no means can we continue like this. There might be hundreds of connection points in this magic array. By the time we locate the ones remaining, the other connection points might have repaired themselves already, Shifeng said, his head aching. A magic array that was capable of self-repair was simply unheard of. If they did not have a dozen or so players moving separately to destroy the connection points, it was simply impossible to destroy every single connection point in this magic array. Destroying the connection points suddenly became a much harder task than Shifeng had imagined it to be. "Guild leader, I found something here. Come over and take a look," Aqua Rose said through the party chat. Hearing that there was a new discovery, Shifeng immediately hurried over to Aqua Rose's location. Aqua Rose was currently situated in the middle of this 7 luminaries mountain, inside an extremely obscure cave. If not for the indicator provided by the system map, Shifeng could not have found the cave Aqua Rose was in. After entering the cave, Shifeng immediately observed his surroundings. He discovered that the walls of the cave were covered with engravings of divine runes. The golden glow these divine runes were giving off brightly illuminating the interior of the cave. Looking at the cave's central crystal pillar, Shifeng noticed a blood-red stone embedded in it. This piece of stone was just like a beating heart, only, instead of bright red liquid, an endless amount of mana passed through it. Meanwhile, the mana that passed through this blood-red stone became much purer in quality. "Aqua, how did you manage to find this place?" Shifeng asked, astonished by this scene before him. "I just happened to discover a particularly thick mana vein and followed it here." Aqua Rose beamed a proud smile at Shifeng. If they demolished this place, then the magic array would definitely be finished. "Guild leader, I'll start destroying this place, alright?" Aqua Rose could wait no longer. She had been trapped in this godforsaken place for so many days now. During this period of time, she had no option but to keep contact with her subordinates through the phone in order to make arrangements for the daily affairs of the guild. She had also instructed them to prepare for the establishment of their guild residence. Currently, most of the average players in White River City were already around level 14 to level 15, while the elite players of the various guilds were already at level 17. The intensity of the competition for the 3 great dungeons had also reached its peak by now. Out of all the guilds in White River City, Ouroboros shone the brightest. They had already managed to take down the second boss of the hard mode Land of Death, and they were currently in the midst of challenging the third boss of the dungeon. Meanwhile, Darkstar, which ranked after Ouroboros, was still attempting to raid the second boss. As for the other guilds, they had also passed through normal mode, and were currently preparing to raid hard mode. Furthermore, as players started raiding the hard mode bosses of the 3 great dungeons, they soon discovered the astonishing benefits they could obtain. Aside from dropping level 15 secret silver ranked set equipment, the bosses also dropped plenty of recipes and designs. Players could also obtain the guild task order that could not be obtained from 20-man team dungeons or lower. These guild task orders could be used to accelerate the promotion of a guild. Otherwise, it would take ages for guilds to get promoted if they simply relied on the meager guild reputation their members obtained by completing daily quests. Yet, as one of the top 6 guilds in White River City, Zero Wing had actually remained inactive all this time. Not only had it accomplished nothing during this period of time, it did not even set foot in any of the 3 great dungeons. It had simply focused its attention on raiding level 15, 10, and 20-man dungeons, and its decision to do so had greatly confused the masses. Even though Zero Wing clearly had the strength to challenge the 3 great dungeons, it had chosen not to take action instead. The guild's behavior had caused many of the new members to grow dissatisfied, and a majority of these players had chosen to leave the guild one after another. Very quickly, Zero Wing's member count that had originally exceeded 8,000 had quickly dwindled down to just slightly more than 6,000. This situation had panicked Aqua Rose somewhat. In reply to Aqua Rose's panic, Shifeng had simply said, if they wish to leave, then let them leave. You don't need to stop them. The guild is too bloated right now, so this is a good chance to rid ourselves of those that joined solely with the intention of taking advantage of us. The guild would become much purer after those players are gone. Hearing Shifeng saying so, Aqua Rose had no choice but to turn a blind eye to all the players withdrawing from the guild. However, she did make sure to record the names of those who left. In the future, they would no longer be welcomed into the guild. Meanwhile, the players that withdrew from the guild simply reacted with contempt at Aqua Rose's actions. They had even made a mockery of Zero Wing, declaring that they would never rejoin a lousy guild like Zero Wing. Moreover, as if to rub salt into the wound, Darkstar had also been secretly killing many players from Zero Wing, causing even more players to withdraw from the guild. As of this moment, there were only around 4,000 members remaining in Zero Wing. Not to mention a third-rate guild, they were not even comparable to a large unrated guild right now. Hence, Aqua Rose was in a rush to break out of this place. She wanted to quickly return and rectify the guild. Hold on a minute, Shifeng hurriedly said when he noticed a large fireball already appearing in Aqua Rose's hand. We don't really need to destroy it. But, how are we supposed to leave this place if we don't destroy it, then? Aqua Rose asked. I have my own ways. Shifeng revealed a faint smile as he looked at the blood-red stone embedded inside the crystal pillar. Shifeng truly had not expected to find this piece of blood-red stone here. Instead of calling it a blood-red stone, it would be more appropriate to refer to it as the Philosopher's Stone. Previously, Shifeng had obtained a fragment of the Philosopher's Stone back at the Sun Temple. Now, he had stumbled upon another fragment. The Philosopher's Stone was an alchemy treasure. Despite being fragmented into 5 pieces, each of these individual pieces still contained the strength of an epic-ranked item. Also, when Shifeng discovered the Philosopher's Stone at this place, he quickly understood just how the connection points of the magic array had managed to repair themselves. It turned out it was all because of the Philosopher's Stone. Although I can't take away any of these 7 luminaries crystals, it is still not bad if I can return with this piece of the Philosopher's Stone. Shifeng arrived before the crystal pillar. He then inserted the tip of the abyssal blade into the crevice in the crystal pillar where the Philosopher's Stone was set. With a light tap on the pommel of the abyssal blade, the Philosopher's Stone easily popped out from the crystal pillar. Shifeng promptly retrieved the item and stored it in his bag. Shortly after the Philosopher's Stone was removed from the crystal pillar, the cave started fading away. Moreover, the rate at which it disappeared was visible to the naked eye. The dense elemental mana that filled the air and land also gradually dispersed, becoming thinner and thinner. As for the incomparably hard 7 luminaries crystals, they, too, had begun turning into ash. Not good. This place is about to collapse. We need to leave immediately. Shifeng shouted through the party chat as soon as he noticed this change. Shifeng's group of 3 rushed down the 7 luminaries mountain, and before long the entire mountain started imploding. The magic array that sealed the Forgotten Lands also lost its effectiveness. As for the monolith that had previously been standing on the mountaintop, it remained floating high up in the sky. Gradually, the monolith rose higher and higher, before suddenly releasing a rainbow brilliance. The monolith was like a miniature sun at this moment. Soon after, the dazzling glow disappeared, along with the gigantic monolith itself. After the 7 luminaries mountain collapsed, a bottomless pit appeared in its place. The pit was just like a black hole, devouring everything that entered it. At the deepest reaches of this bottomless pit, there was actually a boundless aura of destruction, and any object that came into contact with this pressure instantly turned into ash. Surprisingly, Shifeng felt signs of life at the very bottom of this immeasurably deep pit, and his entire body instinctively shuddered at this discovery. Guild leader, did we do something bad? Fire Dance asked Shifeng in a careful tone. She, 2. Could feel the immensely frightening pressure that came from the bottomless pit. I don't know, either, Shifeng said, a bitter smile on his face. At this moment, a notification from the system sounded. System: Unique quest miracles unsealed completed. Quest rewards: 1 million EXP, 40 free attribute points, and 40 free mastery points. System: The Endless Abyss has come into existence. Activating new expansion pack, The Great Catastrophe. System: Legendary ranked main storyline Quest 7 treasures activated. Quest details: The Endless Abyss has already opened. You are required to immediately notify the War God's Temple in order to have them reseal the Endless Abyss. After reading these notifications, Shifeng finally had an inkling of what was going on. Inadvertently, they had actually opened the door of taboos. According to Shifeng's memories, the new expansion pack The Great Catastrophe had only appeared 3 months after God's Domain's launch in his previous life. Now, however, because of him, The Great Catastrophe had appeared in advance. Chapter 279, Quality over Quantity. Chapter 279, Quality over Quantity. When Aqua Rose and Fire Dance read the notifications they received, both of them were immediately sent into a daze. A legendary quest. Moreover, it was a main storyline quest, a quest that was capable of changing the history of God's domain. The reward for such a quest would definitely be luxuriant. According to rumors, the minimum reward for completing an epic quest was an epic ranked item, or an item of equivalent value. In other words, if they completed a legendary quest, then the minimum reward they could obtain would be a legendary ranked item. They had never even seen an epic ranked item before, much less a legendary ranked item. It could definitely become the symbol of the guild. However, when the two of them thought about how they were required to seal this endless abyss, they sank into deep despair. The return scrolls are usable now. Let's leave this place, then. Shifeng's memories of the new expansion pack The Great Catastrophe were still fresh in his mind. After the Great Catastrophe occurred, the monsters throughout God's domain started becoming restless. Towns, especially, would randomly come under attack from demonic beasts, resulting in chaos. According to Shifeng's memories, some of the weaker border towns had even been conquered by the demonic beasts, turning those into demonic beast towns. Among the biggest changes made to the game were to the knights in God's domain. After the new pack was implemented, the number of monsters that would appear during nighttime was much higher than before. Moreover, monsters corrupted by the Endless Abyss would also appear. These corrupted monsters would all be transformed into demonic beasts, and even the weakest of demonic beasts were Tier 1 monsters. Which was to say, if players had still not received their promotion into a Tier 1 class, it would be tremendously difficult for them to fight against these monsters. Instead of being the ones doing the killing, players would have a much higher chance of getting killed by these demonic beasts. Hence, after the new expansion pack, players would find it very difficult to grind and level up during nighttime. In contrast to the shock Aqua Rose and Fire Dance felt, the revelation of the new pack caused a sensation throughout the entire Starmoon Kingdom. Players could not help but feel excited after finding out about the Great Catastrophe expansion pack. The official developers of the game had already revealed information about this new expansion pack. In the future, demonic beasts would randomly launch assaults on towns, and in response to such attacks, towns would issue defense quests to players. As long as players managed to defend the town, they would receive bountiful rewards. Of these rewards, there would even be secret silver ranked items and many more valuable items. In addition, players would also receive city reputation from completing the defense quest. These defense quests would undeniably allow average players to quickly improve themselves, hence the excitement of many of the average players over the arrival of this new expansion pack. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in White River City had also suddenly cooled down, as many players had chosen to head out to the towns instead. They intended to grind for some levels while they awaited for a demonic beast assault to occur. If luck would have it, they might even happen upon a demonic beast assault, making a huge profit from completing the resultant defense quest. Guild leader, should we arrange for a few members to head towards various towns and keep an eye out for a demonic beast assault? Aqua Rose suggested, Her brows wrinkled slightly when she looked at the deserted streets of White River City. The other guilds were currently busying themselves with raiding the 3 great dungeons. They definitely would not have the time to pay attention to these demonic beast assaults. Hence, this was a good chance for Zero Wing to shine. Let's not participate in the demonic beast assaults. Focus on leveling up. Level 20 is the time when our guild will shine. Shifeng shook his head, a knowing smile on his face. In the past, Shifeng had experienced many assaults launched by demonic beasts. Hence, he knew very well how difficult it was to actually receive the reward of a defense quest. The reason being, even the weakest demonic beast was a Tier 1 monster. They would all be level 30 or above. Shifeng had even once encountered a Tier 3 demonic beast during an assault. If they were to try and defend a town right now, it would simply be suicide. Naturally, Shifeng would not let the members of his guild die a pointless death. One could say that towns were extremely dangerous locations right now. If players were to truly meet with a demonic beast assault, then it was not luck but fate. Currently, the safest places in God's domain were cities, since there would be high-tier NPCs guarding them. Take White River City for example. There were 3 Tier 4 NPCs guarding it, so demonic beasts would not dare to casually approach the city itself. If we don't participate and make some achievements, many more of the remaining members might choose to withdraw from the guild. Aqua Rose could not understand what was going through Shifeng's mind. Before, they had given up on competing over the 3 great dungeons. Now, they were also going to give up such a good chance to earn precious equipment and reputation. Just what were they supposed to do? Let them leave, then. Our guild is only capable of handling 3,000 members right now, and we are still well above that number. It would be even better if they do leave. Shifeng smiled without care. What Shifeng was trying to pursue was quality, not quantity. God's domain was a game, and the resources available to players were limited. Meanwhile, the more members they had in the guild, the more resources the guild needed to spend. However, if the resources available in the guild only amounted to so much, having more members in the guild would mean that each member would receive less resources. As a result, their development speed would also fall. In the past, Shadow had conducted a mass recruitment of players, recruiting all kinds of players into the guild. In the end, the guild had bitten off more than it could chew, causing its development to slow to a crawl. In this life, Shifeng would not repeat the same mistakes Shadow made in the past. The members in the guild could just leave for all he cared. He definitely would not try to stop them from leaving. Talent was very important if one wished to become an expert in God's domain. However, truly talented people were limited. In the past, a majority of the experts in God's domain had participated in one battle after another, gradually learning and accumulating the experience needed to become an expert, instead of relying on talent. Instead of cultivating some two-faced talented guild members, Shifeng would rather invest his resources in nurturing normal, but loyal, guild members. In the past, a super guild called Black Tower had sent over 200,000 of their members to attack a second-rate guild called Solitary Rulers. Meanwhile, Solitary Rulers had less than 80,000 members in total. The guild was believed to have the fewest members among all second-rate guilds. Before the battle between the two guilds had even started, everyone had already expected Black Tower to easily obtain victory. However, the end result was far from what others had imagined it to be. Although both guilds clashed tens of times, Black Tower hadn't succeeded in destroying the city governed by Solitary Rulers. While more than 30,000 members of Solitary Rulers had died in that battle, Black Tower had lost more than 3 times that number, with over 100,000 members of Black Tower dying. Black Tower suffered a tremendous loss after that battle, greatly shocking the other guilds that were watching from the sidelines. In the end, Black Tower had no choice but to mobilize its 7 Tier 5 Saint Rank players and one of its Tier 6 God Rank players to destroy Solitary Rulers. However, every member of Solitary Rulers still fought to the bloody end, fighting tooth and nail against their eventual demise. Before they lost their city, they had even managed to kill 2 of the Saint Rank players and another 100,000 or so Black Tower members. In the subsequent clashes between the two guilds, Solitary Rulers had suffered one defeat after another. After all, The Tier 6 God rank expert and 7 Tier 5 Saint rank experts were simply too powerful. As a result, solitary rulers lost 5 of the cities they governed in quick succession. By the time the battlefield moved to solitary rulers' final base of operations, Unparalleled City, amazingly, not a single member had chosen to withdraw from the guild. Even after dying tens of times, they still chose to charge head-on into the battlefield. Shifeng couldn't help but shiver every time he recalled the unyielding attitude of those iron-blooded souls. Clearly, the difference in strength between the two guilds was like heaven and earth. Yet, instead of giving up and accepting their fates, every single member of solitary rulers had chosen to brave the battlefield. It was also due to this reason that Black Tower had suffered such immense losses. If it were any other guild standing in solitary rulers' place, the members would have long since abandoned hope and quit the guild. They would not have chosen to fight at all. While Black Tower was in the midst of conquering solitary rulers' final city, however, another superguild had attempted to take advantage of the situation and laid siege to Black Tower's cities. As a result, Black Tower had no choice but to give up their plan of completely annihilating solitary rulers. Meanwhile, solitary rulers had instantly risen to fame after this conflict, becoming the role model of all second-rate and third-rate guilds. Aside from solitary rulers as an example of quality over quantity, there was also the adventurer team that was known throughout the entire God's domain, the Midnight Tea Party. Although its members numbered less than 30, not even superguilds dared to cross it. In God's domain, although quantity was important, quality was even more important. I understand. Looking at Shifeng's determined expression, Aqua Rose had no better choice but to concede to his decision. It was indeed like Shifeng had said, there were too many members in the guild. The current member count far exceeded their range of tolerance. By having those unfaithful members leave, they could also lay a good foundation for their guild's future. Another reason why Aqua Rose had agreed to Shifeng's decision was mainly because of the guild residents. Once they revealed their guild residents to the public, there would be no shortage of players wanting to join their guild. If they did not possess the guild residents, Aqua Rose definitely would not have agreed to such a self-destructive course. After Aqua Rose went on her own way, Shifeng headed to the Adventurers Guild. Now that the Great Catastrophe expansion pack had been activated, he needed to quickly handle the matters concerning the guild residents. Chapter 280 Zero Wing Residents. Chapter 280 Zero Wing Residents. Currently, the interior of the Adventurers Association of White River City was filled with players coming and going. Most of these players were here to accept or hand in their daily quests. However, there were insufficient NPCs to cater to the large number of players. As a result, these players usually needed to wait in the lounge for a period of time before they could accept or turn in their quests. Having nothing better to do inside the lounge, some guild players started ordering alcohol and holding a discussion among themselves. Zero Wing is getting worse by the day. If I had known this would happen earlier, I would have definitely joined some other large guild to develop myself. Perhaps I might have already become the leader of a party by now. Brother Hui, as expected, you are still the smarter and wiser one. You joined Darkstar from the very start, and now, you've already become the vice leader of a 15-man team. Now that I have left Zero Wing, I will be relying on Brother Hui's guidance from now on. A shield warrior with tanned skin flattered the robust-looking berserker sitting beside him. No problem. With me around, you will definitely have no problem joining the guild, the berserker assured him, clapping his chest. Meanwhile, sitting beside this berserker addressed as Brother Hui was a pretty female mage. Although her face looked average, she had an excellent figure. Coquettishly fluttering her eyelashes, the female mage looked at the person known as Brother Hui, sweetly saying, "Big Brother Hui, I've been wanting to go to the level 15 Wind Ridge. When will you take me there?" Wind Ridge was a level 15, 20-man team dungeon. Among level 15 team dungeons, Wind Ridge had a below-average difficulty. However, to average players at this stage of the game, even a level 15, 10-man team dungeon was a great challenge, not to mention a 20-man dungeon like Wind Ridge. Of course. Isn't it just Wind Ridge? You're already my woman now, how could you settle for only a meager Wind Ridge? Tomorrow, I'll call up my men and bring you to the demon's castle. The berserker wrapped his arm around the female mage's willowy waist, a nasty grin on his face. Many onlookers grew envious at this scene. They could not help but wish that they, too, could join Darkstar and getting a beauty for themselves as well. Brother Hui, I hear that the demon's castle has a very high difficulty. Don't tell me you've already managed to obtain the raid strategy from Zero Wing's main force, the tanned shield warrior asked curiously. Indeed, we've managed to obtain the strategy already. However, even without it, with Darkstar's strength, we could still easily conquer the demon's castle. The main reason we haven't done so is simply because of the competition we're having with Ouroboros. Otherwise, Zero Wing would not have had the chance to take the limelight as they did before. Look, isn't Zero Wing in shambles now? They're simply a little faster in terms of leveling up. They haven't even cleared the normal mode of any of the 3 great dungeons yet. Darkstar, on the other hand, has already killed the second boss of hard mode and started trying to raid the third boss. We have already caught up with Ouroboros. It is only a matter of time before we surpass Ouroboros. I really don't know what qualifications Zero Wing possesses to be considered as one of the top 6 guilds in White River City. The berserker's loud voice was filled with disdain as he spoke of Zero Wing. Even though the guild clearly has no future, there is still more than half the original number of players remaining in it. It really makes you wonder just what is going through those people's minds. They're just fools. Brother Hui, you're right. I really regret listening to my friend's words about joining Zero Wing back then. The shield warrior nodded his head in agreement, his heart filled with great disappointment. If he had joined Darkstar early on, he might also have had a beauty accompanying him by now. Meanwhile, seated near this trio, Shifeng was currently quietly browsing through information on the official forums. Naturally, he could clearly hear the loud conversation between the robust berserker and the skinny shield warrior, and the same went for everyone else waiting inside the lounge. However, Shifeng made no comment on their mocking words. After all, everyone had the freedom to make their own decisions. As for the shield warrior's regret at joining Zero Wing, Shifeng simply revealed a calm smile. If this shield warrior knew that Zero Wing was about to establish their very own guild residence, just what sort of emotions would he have? At that time, even the words earth-shattering would not be enough to describe the amount of shock he would feel. However, Shifeng really could not be blamed for this. Soon after, Shifeng headed to the counter and dealt with all the necessary procedures. After he turned his private territory into a guild residence, he also spent 3,000 gold to build an advanced guild hall in place of the Purple Sun Mansion. The advanced guild hall could fit up to 3,000 people. As for the other facilities of the guild residence, those would only be obtainable from large-scale team dungeons that were level 25 or above. Some time was needed before the construction of the advanced guild hall could be completed. After Shifeng completed all the necessary procedures, his remaining task was to head to the War God's Temple and report the matter of the Endless Abyss. Just as Shifeng was about to leave the Adventurers Association, the system notification sounded. Moreover, this wasn't just any normal notification. Instead, it was a notification sent to the entire Star Moon Kingdom. Star Moon Kingdom System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for becoming the first guild in Star Moon Kingdom to establish a guild residence. Rewarding 10,000 guild reputation, 10,000 guild popularity and 10 gold coins to the guild. I spent 3,000 gold, yet only got 10 gold in return. The system sure is tight-fisted. Shifeng laughed. However, Shifeng did not concern himself with such an amount of gold. The reason being, in these past few days, the Starstreak trading firm was already making a daily profit of over 1,700 gold. It was all thanks to the popularity it gained from selling the Arclight shield, as well as the basic mana armor kits. During this period of time, the forging genius, Cream Cocoa, had also been continuously producing gemstone buckles, advanced whetstones, and many more forging products. Moreover, the number of forging players Melancholic Smile recruited was also rising. Not only did the combination of these new forgers and the various forging designs provided by Zero Wing increase the number of products sold by the Starstreak trading firm, it also expanded the company's product selection. As a result, The daily profits of the Starstreak trading firm continuously rose. Currently, the Starstreak trading firm already controlled over half of the market for forging products in White River City. Moreover, such a situation wasn't limited to just White River City, it extended to the 7 surrounding cities. Hence, Shifeng was not lacking in money at all. Compared to having spent 3,000 gold coins, Shifeng was more interested in the 10,000 guild popularity points. This was a feature that would only become available to a guild after it established a guild residence. The higher the guild popularity, the more famous a guild would become among NPCs. With 10,000 guild popularity, Zero Wing could be considered relatively famous among the NPC populace. Compared to starting from scratch, having this 10,000 guild popularity made things much simpler for him. It should be known that, when a guild member completed a quest commissioned by an NPC, the guild would normally receive only 1 to 3 guild popularity. Only quests with high difficulty would reward 5 to 10 points. In other words, a guild needed to complete thousands of guild quests in order to accumulate 10,000 guild popularity. These bonus guild popularity points had saved the guild plenty of development time. Meanwhile, inside the lounge of the Adventurers Association, the Tan Shield warrior that had just recently left Zero Wing no longer felt joyful about joining Darkstar. On the contrary, his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Inside the Land of Death, one of the 3 great dungeons, Darkstar's main team was currently battling against a white-bone giant elephant, which was over 20 meters in height. At this time, the MT of the team, Lone Tyrant, was enduring the attacks from this white-bone giant elephant. Every time he took an attack from the boss, he would receive over -2,000 damage. His HP constantly rose and fell, his life hanging by a thread. Just as the white-bone giant elephant in the distance was preparing to charge, Lone Tyrant suddenly received a system notification. Lone Tyrant was momentarily stunned by what he saw. How did Zero Wing obtain a guild residence so quickly? Lone Tyrant couldn't help but yell out when he saw the description of this system notification, his eyes nearly popping out of their sockets. He even forgot to use a skill to block the incoming attack from the white-bone giant elephant before him. As a result, he was turned into a pile of meat paste by the boss's foot, losing his life instantly. What followed was what would be expected, a team wipe. Chapter 281 A Guild's Most Powerful Weapon. Chapter 281 A Guild's Most Powerful Weapon. Tens of players were currently lining up outside a large and peaceful tomb. Everyone in this team of players was level 17 or above, and all of their equipment were at least mysterious iron rank with a few pieces of secret silver equipment mixed in. Most of the equipment the leading MT of this team had were of secret silver rank, and the crescent-shaped shield he carried was even of fine gold rank. Meanwhile, all of these well-equipped players were looking reverently at the peerless beauty standing before them. Looking out through the gaps of her silver-white helmet, her black, crystalline eyes shone with both intelligence and wisdom. Her hair, which was a midnight black, hung down to her waist, gently brushing against the silver-white armor she wore. Resting her hand on the hilt of a dark blue greatsword glowing dark blue, she exuded the indomitable aura of a goddess of war as she silently stood there. This peerless war goddess was none other than the snow goddess of Ouroboros, Gentle Snow. After undergoing the baptism of the 3 great dungeons, Gentle Snow was even more dazzling than before. She was like a rough stone that had been polished, instantly revealing the sparkle of an ice-cold sapphire. Currently, not only was Gentle Snow fully equipped with the Snowfall set equipment, a secret silver ranked set equipment, the great sword she wielded, albeit of indiscernible quality, was also giving off a frightening amount of energy. The Snowfall set equipment could only be obtained from the hard mode of the 3 great dungeons. As for the blue sky greatsword Gentle Snow wielded, she had obtained it after killing a great lord that served as a protector of a ruined temple. If Shifeng saw this 2-handed greatsword, he would definitely be shocked. The reason being, this greatsword was similar to the Abyssal Blade, since it, too, was a magic weapon. Furthermore, it was also one of the 36 famed swords of God's domain, Blue Sky. Just as Gentle Snow's team was about to raid the 4th boss of the Land of Death, the Whitebone General Jera, Gentle Snow suddenly received a system notification, and a hint of astonishment flashed through her eyes when she read its contents. How can he be so fast? Gentle Snow knew exactly how difficult it was to obtain a guild residence. Even though she had a powerful guild like Ouroboros, the #1 guild in White River City, backing her, the reputation she had collected was still far from enough to allow her to become a baroness of White River City. Yet, Zero Wing was still a step ahead of her. Gentle Snow's lips suddenly curled into a faint smile as she muttered, "It seems I need to congratulate him." In White River City, Ouroboros and Zero Wing were actually allies, although this matter was not known to the public. If people did find out, however, they would definitely be greatly shocked. After all, who would ever imagine that White River City's #1 guild would actually be willing to form an alliance with Zero Wing, a guild that was declining by the day? However, Gentle Snow had indeed done such a thing. Although Ouroboros was the #1 guild in White River City, they were still far from being considered an unshakable existence. Just the fact that Darkstar was close to surpassing them showed how vulnerable Ouroboros was. Moreover, Darkstar also had some hidden connections with world dominators, which was also a first-rate guild like Ouroboros. If these two powerful guilds joined hands to wage war against Ouroboros, then Ouroboros would definitely suffer a huge loss. Hence, Ouroboros itself needed allies. Setting aside Darkstar and world dominators, there were still 3 others among the top 6 guilds in White River City. Of the 3, the most powerful would be Emperor's Light, a first-rate guild, while coming in second would be the Assassin's Alliance, a second-rate guild. As for Zero Wing, they were considered the weakest of the top 6 guilds in White River City. Yet in defiance of all logic, Gentle Snow had chosen to ally herself with the recently established Zero Wing, out of these 3 guilds. The reason for her decision was her optimism for Zero Wing. Setting aside the mysterious, elusive, and heaven-defyingly powerful Yi Feng, just the fact that Zero Wing had Black Flame in its midst had already solidified Gentle Snow's conviction. Not only was Black Flame the publicly acknowledged chief forger of Starmoon Kingdom, his personal combat strength was also frighteningly great. In addition, he had a mysterious organization supporting him from behind the scenes, not to mention a deep connection with the Starstreak trading firm. Black Flame's shocking financial power put even Gentle Snow herself to shame. Although she could not make head or tail of the connection between Yi Feng and Black Flame, she knew for a fact that both of them possessed immeasurable strength. Yet, despite being so powerful, neither of them chose to reveal that strength to the public, and such an action greatly confused Gentle Snow. Just the thought of the two of them working together had sent chills down Gentle Snow's spine. As if to put icing on the cake, the person named Aqua Rose had also appeared in Zero Wing out of nowhere. Aqua Rose used to be an honorary elder of Twilight Echo. Although her fame was less than Gentle Snow's, that was only because Gentle Snow had appeared in many advertisements before, raising her profile in the public eye. Gentle Snow had never personally fought against Aqua Rose. However, based on the video recordings of Aqua Rose's battles, in terms of combat techniques, should they ever have a fight between themselves, Gentle Snow felt she only had a 50% chance of emerging victorious. In any case, just the presence of these 3 powerhouses in Zero Wing made it worthwhile for Gentle Snow to ally herself with them. Not to mention, Zero Wing still had many other experts within their ranks. Their true strength and potential were simply unfathomable. In the eyes of the public, Zero Wing would sooner or later vanish from existence. However, Gentle Snow knew very clearly, Zero Wing's current calm was merely the prelude to their next breakout. The situation right now would be the best example. Against all expectations, Zero Wing had suddenly become the first guild in Starmoon Kingdom to obtain its own guild residence, miles ahead of the other guilds. Within moments, Zero Wing had become the focal point of all players throughout Starmoon Kingdom. Shortly after the appearance of the system notification, Zero Wing's recruitment point was overrun by a stampede of players. Although Aqua Rose had long since prepared for such a reaction, the sea of players desperately trying to join the guild still left her breathless. Meanwhile, the players who had previously withdrawn from Zero Wing presently had regret filling up their intestines. If they had not acted so impulsively and had waited just a few more days, they would have been able to enjoy the various benefits offered by a guild residence. Now, unless they deleted their game accounts and started over with a new name, it was impossible for them to join Zero Wing anymore. However, who would have the courage to actually delete their account and start all over again? As for the players that had chosen to remain in Zero Wing, currently, they were extremely happy about their wise decision. Now that Zero Wing had a guild residence, not to mention being able to receive more quests, they could save a lot of money, thanks to the equipment and weapons repair facility of the guild residence. Neither would they need to spend money to recover their stamina at hotels, they could simply do so at the guild residence. Furthermore, they could also obtain a double EXP buff just by resting inside the guild residence. With this buff, they could grind and level up with much greater efficiency than before. In addition, guild residences could also provide private rooms. This was also the greatest benefit of having a guild residence. In God's domain, every player would wish to possess their very own private room or house. As long as players logged off inside their own rooms, they could still accumulate the double EXP buff, and with much greater efficiency than in the guild lounge to boot, even though they weren't personally within the game. Normally, when guild members rested within the guild residence's guild lounge for 48 hours, they could accumulate 20% double EXP, and they could accumulate up to 1 level's worth of double EXP. In the case of a private room, however, players only needed to rest for 24 hours in order to accumulate 20% double EXP, and they could likewise accumulate up to 1 level's worth of double EXP. Although the maximum capacity of the buff was the same, the accumulation speed inside a private room was double that of the guild lounge. Of course, this was only in the case of a 1-star private housing. In God's domain, housing was also categorized into different levels. Meanwhile, the higher the level, the greater the benefits a player could enjoy. The lowest level housing was 1-star, while the highest was 10-star. Each increase in level required a huge sum of money, and also certain special materials. It would not be easy for players to upgrade their private housings. For a 1-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 20% double EXP, up to a maximum of 1 level's worth of double EXP. For a 2-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 25% double EXP, up to a maximum of 1 level's worth of double EXP. For a 7-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 50% double EXP, up to a maximum of 1 level's worth of double EXP. In addition, players would also receive a Vigor increased buff, increasing all attributes by 5% for 2 hours. For a 8-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 50% triple EXP, up to a maximum of 1.5 levels worth of triple EXP. In addition, players would also receive a Vigor increased buff, increasing all attributes by 5% for 3 hours. For a 9-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 50% triple EXP, up to a maximum of 2 levels worth of triple EXP. In addition, players would also receive a Vigor increased buff, increasing all attributes by 8% for 3 hours. For a 10-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 50% triple EXP, up to a maximum of 3 levels worth of triple EXP. In addition, players would also receive a Vigor increased buff, increasing all attributes by 10% for 4 hours. However, it was simply too difficult for players to obtain their own houses in White River City. Yet, buying a house in a town would not be convenient for them. Meanwhile, guild residences could provide its members with private rooms, although not everyone could enjoy the benefits of a private room, due to limited space inside a guild residence. Normally, these private rooms would be given to members who contributed greatly to the guild and also the upper management of the guild. If there were any additional private rooms, guild members could also rent them using the contribution points they accumulated from raiding dungeons and doing quests. In God's domain, the matter of leveling up would always be a headache to players. Moreover, the further into the game a player went, the harder it was for them to level up. It would not be strange for players to level up only once every 3 to 4 days. If players died out in the fields, they would also lose an entire level as a penalty. Hence, a tool that could aid players in leveling up quicker would definitely be well received. This guild benefit alone already held a fatal attraction for all players. And that was in addition to the large number of guild quests available for choosing, which would dramatically accelerate players' leveling speed. Chapter 282, Dark Wind. Chapter 282, Dark Wind. The War God's Temple, an organization that was founded shortly after the Great Destruction, had been in existence for thousands of years now, protecting the human race from invasions by foreign races. Now that the endless abyss had been opened, the humans of God's domain would have to rely on the War God's Temple to deal with the invasion of demonic beasts. It was no longer a situation that could be handled by any single country. Aside from being the protector of the human race, the War God's Temple was also a location for players to learn advanced skills. Meanwhile, players only needed to complete the quests they received at the War God's Temple in order to do so. Shortly after Shifeng arrived at the War God's Temple, he reported the Endless Abyss to the Knight Captain on duty. The War God's Temple was considered one of the most powerful forces in God's domain. Just a normal knight here was already a level 180 Tier 2 NPC. As for the Knight Captain, he was a level 200 Tier 3 NPC. The Knight Captain revealed an anxious expression after hearing Shifeng's report. "Your Excellency Black Flame, this matter is of utmost importance. However, as I'll need to immediately send out warnings to all cities throughout the kingdom and also muster troops to the front lines, I'll have to trouble you to head to the War God's Temple in the capital city and report this matter to Lord Eucharis and seek his aid." The Knight Captain passed a gold token to Shifeng, then promptly headed out of the temple, not giving Shifeng any chance to even refuse. Shifeng was left speechless by the Knight Captain's words. Fortunately, he only needed to head to the capital city and look for the person named Eucharis, an easy task to accomplish. Following which, Shifeng left the War God's Temple and hurried over to White River City's teleportation hall. Just as Shifeng was about to enter the teleportation hall, however, 6 robust-looking players stood in front of the stone staircase, completely blocking the entryway. These 6 players were all level 18, such a level could definitely be ranked at the very top of White River City. Moreover, the equipment these players wore were of excellent quality, majority of which were of secret silver rank. Meanwhile, the solemn-looking middle-aged man who looked like the leader of this party of players, had the best equipment out of these 6 players. He was actually fully equipped with secret silver equipment. His gaze was like a sharp blade, and his entire body exuded such an ice-cold aura that other players unconsciously detoured as they walked past him. Although Shifeng had never fought against these 6 players before, he could clearly tell that they were very strong. There were very few parties of their caliber in White River City. Meanwhile, pinned to the chests of these players were black 6-point stars. This black star was none other than Darkstar's guild emblem. "What can I do for you?" Shifeng asked. "You're Black Flame, right? I am Ming Shaw of Underworld. I am here to give you a piece of good news," the middle-aged man said in a condescending tone. Although Black Flame had been titled as the chief forger of Starmoon Kingdom, in Ming Shaw's eyes, he was merely a clown prancing on the stage. Whether it was in reality or in God's domain, only strength truly mattered. A forger that only knew how to stay hidden inside a room was nothing more than a tool for strong players like them. If not for the matter of the guild residents astonishing the upper echelons of Underworld, Ming Shaw would not even be here trying to make contact with Black Flame. Instead of Black Flame, the person Ming Shaw was interested in was Yi Feng, the player widely acclaimed a god-ranked swordsman. Ming Shaw really wished to meet him. Moreover, young Master Feng had also given orders to get rid of that Yi Feng and obtain the epic-ranked item in Shifeng's hands. Unfortunately, Yi Feng proved simply too elusive. No matter how many men Ming Shaw had sent out, they still could not find a trace of that Yi Feng. Ming Shaw was very disappointed by such a result, as he never imagined that Yi Feng would be such a coward, not having the courage to even come out and fight. Good news. Then why do I feel that you guys are coming with bad intentions in hand? Shifeng revealed an indifferent smile as he sent a glance at the other 5 menacing players. Master Black Flame, it is our fault for behaving too rashly. However, we truly do have great news for you. Only, I hope that you can take a trip with us. After all, this place isn't exactly suitable for discussions of such an important matter. At this moment, another person walked up from behind the 6 players. This person was similarly a middle-aged man. Currently, this man had a wide smile on his honest-looking face. When Shifeng used observing eyes on this man, he discovered that this man was actually called South Wolf. Immediately, Shifeng came to a realization. The road for enemies truly is narrow. Shifeng inwardly chuckled. South Wolf was none other than the person that tried to threaten Shifeng into surrendering his ice blue devil flame. After being rejected, South Wolf had even declared that he would take action against Shifeng. Originally, Shifeng had intended to take a look at just how powerful the organization known as Underworld was. Unfortunately, this matter had been quelled by gentle snow. Shifeng never thought he would meet this fellow once again today. "What if I don't want to go?" Shifeng asked. "We have long since thought of this point, hence I asked Brother Ming Shaw and his friends to come and personally invite Master Black Flame over," South Wolf said with a hypocritical smile, sending a glance at the 6 underworld guards beside him. "All right, then, since you guys are being so sincere." Shifeng nodded. South Wolf had obviously already familiarized himself with the rules of White River City. Although the rules stated that battles were not allowed within the city limits, that was on the premise that actual damage was caused. There would be no problems if they simply dragged him away. Of course, Shifeng's strength attribute was extremely high. South Wolf's group had absolutely no chance of abducting him. Just recently, he had obtained 40 free attribute points as a reward for releasing the Forgotten Lands. Although Shifeng had added 30 of those points into intelligence, in order to equip the Heavenly Dragon's Breath even a little earlier, he had placed the remaining 10 into strength. Aside from that, due to the Abyssal Blade's attributes, Shifeng obtained 2 additional free attribute points every time he leveled up. When coupling those with the strength provided by his other equipment, Shifeng's strength attribute had long since broken through the 170-point threshold. In terms of the strength attribute, very few players throughout God's domain could be a match for him. However, it seemed that someone from the mysterious upper echelon of Underworld wanted to meet him, and Shifeng was curious enough to agree. "Let us go, then," South Wolf said as he led the way. A short while later, Shifeng and the others arrived inside a high-class bar. Very few average players could be seen inside this bar, as most could not afford this luxurious place. "Master Black Flame, please, come in. Young Master Feng has been waiting for you for a long time now." South Wolf pushed apart the doors to a private room, hinting that Shifeng should enter. Upon entering the private room, Shifeng immediately discovered an imposing yet charming youth sitting inside. This youth was also accompanied by 2 beautiful female companions at his sides. These 2 beauties were not players but NPCs. Just like how Anna was working as Shifeng's assistant at the Star Street trading firm, these beauties were clearly servants of this young man. This sight was far more shocking than if he had 2 attractive female players accompanying him. At this stage of the game, having the ability to possess 2 NPC servants showed that this youth before him was definitely out of the ordinary. "You are in the upper echelon of Underworld?" Shifeng asked. "That's right. This one here is known as Feng Shenyang, the vice leader of Underworld's Star Moon Kingdom Eastern Branch. Of course, you can also call me by my character name, Dark Wind." Feng Shenyang introduced himself. "I wonder, what business does Vice Leader Feng have with me?" Shifeng asked. Judging from Feng Xuanyang's tone, Shifeng had already made a rough guess as to Underworld's strength. Although he had long since deduced that Underworld had a great deal of power and that their influence covered more than just a single kingdom, Shifeng still could not help but feel shocked after having his conclusions confirmed. It was no wonder even that Gentle Snow was wary of them. Star Moon Kingdom could be categorized into 5 separate regions: North, South, East, West, and Center. White River City was located in the east side. Meanwhile, Feng Shenyang was in charge of managing the affairs of Underworld's Star Moon Kingdom Eastern Branch. The authority he wielded was definitely great. "I heard that Master Black Flame is the founder of Zero Wing. You have even managed to elevate Zero Wing to its current position. We at Underworld feel very optimistic about Zero Wing's future, hence we wish to invest in some shares." Feng Shenyang then pointed towards Ming Shaw, who was currently standing by the door, saying, "You've already seen for yourself the strength of Underworld. Because of us, even the previously insignificant third-rate guild Darkstar has instantly become a powerhouse in White River City. If Master Black Flame is willing, Underworld can similarly make Zero Wing grow rapidly. Not only could you become the overlord of White River City, you could even become the #1 guild in the entire eastern region of Starmoon Kingdom. I wonder if Master Black Flame might be interested." Chapter 283 Arrogance. Chapter 283 Arrogance. Feng Xuanyang's words dripped with temptation. Just the prestige of being the #1 guild in the entire eastern region of Starmoon Kingdom would cause many to fight over it. These exact same words might have been used to attract Lone Tyrant into cooperating with Underworld back then. Under the banner of the #1 player on the ranking list, in addition to Underworld's covert support, Darkstar had managed to rocket to fame, becoming a guild capable of rivaling even the powerful Ouroboros. So that's how it is. Shifeng suddenly came to a realization. He finally understood why Darkstar could become so amazing, just like that, with experts appearing in the guild out of nowhere. Its abrupt rise was all because of Underworld helping it in secret. However, now that Zero Wing had established a guild residence, Underworld couldn't help but reconsider its original plans, hence its interest in investing in Zero Wing. Shifeng couldn't help but acknowledge that Underworld was indeed amazing. They were willing to support an entirely different guild even at the cost of sacrificing all their previous investments. From an outsider's perspective, such an action was plain foolish. However, Shifeng knew that Underworld's decision was, in fact, very wise. It was obvious at first glance how great an influence a guild residence would have towards a guild's success. If it were up to him, he, too, would choose to take such an action. Master Black Flame, you should know that there are over 20 cities just in Starmoon Kingdom's eastern region alone. If Master Black Flame agrees to our proposition, in the future, you will become the absolute overlord of these 20+ cities. Moreover, even though Underworld will be investing in Zero Wing, we will not interfere directly in the management of the guild itself. Rather, we will provide you with a large sum in funding and manpower, Feng Xuanyang slowly said in a tempting tone. We at Underworld have already decided that, as long as Master Black Flame agrees, we will immediately inject 1 billion credits into Zero Wing, and also provide the guild with 100 gold coins every week. In addition, we will also provide 100 experts, and also 1 team of Underworld guards for you, Master Black Flame, to command as you see fit. If Zero Wing develops well, Underworld will invest even more into the guild in the future. Master Black Flame, what do you think? Feng Xuanyang had taken Shifeng's previous silence for hesitation, thinking that Shifeng was definitely considering his proposition, hence he sweetened the deal. In God's domain, wasn't the main purpose one established a guild earning money and gaining status? For a newly established guild, 1 billion credits was definitely an astronomical sum. Even a major corporation in a city couldn't easily take out 1 billion credits. Recently, due to God's domain's raging popularity, the number of corporations investing in the game had been continuously increasing. The value of guilds in God's domain had similarly shot up abruptly. Yet, even so, a third-rate guild with a member count of 20 to 30,000 would, at most, be worth 2 to 300 million credits. Meanwhile, Zero Wing merely had several thousand members in its ranks. Although it had both fame and experts, its value was still not worth 1 billion credits. After taking into account the value of a guild residence, Zero Wing would at most be worth 500 million credits. Hence, it would be completely illogical for Shifeng to refuse the offer of 1 billion credits. I wonder how much shares young Master Feng is intending to purchase? Shifeng asked, an indifferent smile on his face. Not much, just 50%. In exchange for 50% of Zero Wing's shares, you can obtain 1 billion credits, in addition to having many experts to assist you. I believe that no other corporation will be willing to offer such a high price, Feng Xuanyang said confidently. Shifeng propped up his chin with his hand, entering into a deep contemplation. Shortly after, he slowly said, although your offer is indeed attractive, 50% of the guild's shares is simply too much. I am willing to sell 10% at most. Although Feng Xuanyang's offer of 50% seemed as if both sides would be wielding half of the guild's shares, it was simply a trick to make Shifeng drop his guard. In reality, wielding 50% of Zero Wing's shares was already tantamount to full control of the guild. After all, when Shifeng established his guild, he hadn't claimed the full 100% shares of the guild, he had given a small portion to Aqua Rose. If Feng Shenyang purchased 1% of Zero Wing's shares from Aqua Rose, then he would have 51% of the guild's shares. At that time, Feng Xuanyang's words would become law in Zero Wing, while Shifeng would sooner or later end up in a situation like the one in his previous life. Shifeng had sworn to never let something like that happen again in this life. 10%. Feng Shenyang did not dare believe his own ears. He was going to spend 1 billion credits on Zero Wing, yet, all he would get in return was 10% of its shares. Did Shifeng really take Zero Wing for the #1 guild in Starmoon Kingdom? Vice Leader Feng, you must think that the amount I'm offering is too low, right? Shifeng asked, his indifferent smile still on his face. It's only normal that you would think so. However, what I'm trying to say is that 1 billion credits really isn't a big sum of money. I'm already giving young Master Feng a lot of face by offering you 10% of Zero Wing's shares. If it were anyone else here today, I would only offer them 1% at most. In fact, Shifeng was not speaking conceited nonsense at all. Just the gold coins he had on hand right now already exceeded 10,000. If he converted them into credits, they would be worth at least 200 million credits. His daily income was also continuously rising day after day. Just the benefits he could obtain from the Starstreak trading firm had already far exceeded 1 billion credits. Not to mention, Zero Wing's guild residence was also built on a strategic location like the Purple Sun Mansion. The Purple Sun Mansion was the best location for players to establish a guild residence in White River City. It also occupied a broad tract of land, larger than even a football field, which could contain 50,000 people. Not to mention the current state of White River City, where every square inch of land was worth its inch in gold. Even after a decade passed since God's Domain's official launch, the land of the Purple Sun Mansion would still be worth more than 10 billion credits. Although 1 billion credits was indeed an astronomical sum, it was truly not worth 10% of Zero Wing's shares. Even 1% was an overestimation, not to mention 10%. Master Black Flame, there has to be a limit even to jokes. By toying around with me like this, do you take me for someone easily bullied? Feng Xuanyang's expression suddenly changed, his tone turned cold as well. Vice Leader Feng, what I speak is the truth. If Vice Leader Feng feels wronged, then let's just forget about this matter entirely. Shifeng shook his head and laughed. After this meeting, he, too, started thinking of looking for an investment partner. The falling flowers are yearning for love, but the heartless brook ripples on. If Shifeng had rejected Feng Xuanyang's investment proposal from the very beginning, or had argued that Feng Shenyang was asking for too high a percentage of Zero Wing's shares, Feng Shenyang might still have accepted Shifeng's answer with a smile. This was the atrocity of the truth, hence people would often prefer to hear a lie than the truth. The reason being, the truth was much crueler than a lie. If Aqua Rose were here right now, she would definitely scold Shifeng for speaking the truth. Soon after, Shifeng departed from the private room, leaving behind a thoroughly incensed Feng Shenyang. Southwolf, get in here. Feng Shenyang roared. Southwolf hurriedly entered the private room, asking, Young Master Feng, why are you so angry? Did that brat Black Flame fail to appreciate your kindness? Tell Lone Tyrant that he can take action immediately. I don't wish to see the guild called Zero Wing in White River City anymore. Feng Shenyang no longer had his elegant appearance from before. Instead, he revealed his sinister nature, saying, since he isn't willing to cooperate with Underworld, then we will just remove him, one way or another. White River City does not need a guild that Underworld cannot control. Yes, I'll notify Lone Tyrant immediately, Southwolf said with excitement as he licked his lips. After Shifeng departed from the high-class bar, he immediately headed towards the teleportation hall. Spending 32 silver coins, he quickly arrived at Starmoon City, Starmoon Kingdom's most affluent city. Compared to White River City, the competition at Star Moon City was much more intense. Just the number of first-rate guilds present in the city already surpassed 5. The second- and third-rate guilds were even more numerous. Meanwhile, the player population at Star Moon City was over 3 million. Such a number could easily match the total number of players in White River City and its neighboring 7 cities. One could say that Star Moon City was a location that every guild needed to compete for in the future. After all, it was a super city that would be able to contain over 10 million players in the future. Meanwhile, the resources available in the surroundings of Star Moon City were even more abundant. There were plenty of high-level maps that were only a short distance away from the city. Obtaining Star Moon City would be the equivalent of occupying a fifth of the entire Star Moon Kingdom's resources. Chapter 284, Ghost Raider. Chapter 284, Ghost Raider. As the capital city of Star Moon Kingdom, beneath the flourishing appearance of Star Moon City were piles and piles of pearly white bones. The moment Shifeng arrived at the city, he could already sniff out the strong smell of blood. When Shifeng walked the bustling streets of Star Moon City, none of the players he saw belonged to small and unknown guilds. Instead, all the guild players he saw belonged to third-rate guilds or above. As for the unrated guilds, Shifeng could make a general guess as to where they had gone. They had definitely been completely annexed by these large guilds. Furthermore, the average level of players in Star Moon City was very high. In terms of equipment, the players of Star Moon City were also a notch higher than the players of White River City. Originally, it was a very rare sight to find average players possessing bronze equipment. At Star Moon City, however, it was not a rare sight at all. Shifeng had even seen some independent players who possessed equipment of mysterious iron rank and above. As for the players who wore a guild emblem on them, majority of their equipment were of mysterious iron rank. Some elite members of guilds were even fully geared with mysterious iron equipment. The standards of Star Moon City were clearly a lot higher than White River Cities. However, if these players were to be compared to Shifeng, they would still be miles and miles behind. When Shifeng arrived in Star Moon City, he had removed his disguise of Black Flame. Instead, he had chosen to use his original appearance of Yi Feng to move around the city. Hence, he did not choose to hide the equipment he had on him right now. Although Shifeng had already turned off the innate glowing effect that dark gold equipment possessed, he was unable to do anything about the originally dashing appearance of the item itself. There was also the 2 weapons at his waist, the Abyssal Blade and the Demon Bane, whose quality could not be discerned through sight alone. Overall, Shifeng's equipment had caused all the players who walked past him to cast sidelong glances at him. Shifeng was just like a famous celebrity as he strolled along the streets of Star Moon City. It was impossible for him to keep a low profile even if he wanted to. However, Shifeng paid no attention to the stares he was receiving, focusing only on the task at hand. After arriving at Star Moon City, a new city, Shifeng first made a trip to the city's auction house by force of habit. He intended to gauge the market conditions of this entire city. As the capital city, Star Moon City was geographically located in the central region of Star Moon Kingdom. Hence, whether it was the northern, southern, western, or eastern region, all trade would pass through this place. In the past, during the peak of Star Moon Kingdom, Star Moon City controlled a full quarter of Star Moon Kingdom's trade volume. One could simply imagine how large the trade volume at Star Moon City was. If one could dominate Star Moon City, the daily profits one could rake in would be astronomical. In comparison, the Star Streak trading firm's daily profit of 1,600 to 1,700 gold coins was merely a trifling sum. With such a large trade volume available, it would be a lie to say that Shifeng did not have aspirations towards it. Unfortunately, Zero Wing had just recently set out on its journey. It would still be a long time before he could attempt to get a share of the pie known as Star Moon City. Today, Shifeng was simply here to lay the groundwork for his eventual entry into Star Moon City's market in the future. Star Moon City's auction house was also the largest auction house in Star Moon Kingdom. When players registered an item here, the item would also be available for the players in the surrounding tens of cities to purchase. It was much more amazing than the White River City auction house. Moreover, when players from another country wished to visit Star Moon Kingdom, or when players from the kingdom itself wished to head to another country, they would be required to make a transit through Star Moon City, as it was the capital city of the kingdom. This situation also led to players from other countries selling their wares at the Star Moon auction house. Hence, there was a very large variety of items available at the Star Moon auction house, and no other auction house in Star Moon Kingdom could ever dream of being its equal. This was also one of the reasons why many players would willingly come here to purchase or sell their items. The inside of the auction house was filled with a sea of players. After entering the building, Shifeng quickly looked for a quiet corner and sat down. He then called out the auction house interface, quietly browsing through its contents. "Brother Blade, look at that person's amazing equipment. Although my eagle eye skill allows me to identify any weapon or equipment that is fine gold rank or below, when I tried identifying that person's stuff, many of them returned as unidentifiable," a skinny ranger said excitedly as he drooled at Shifeng's equipment. "What? Unidentifiable? Don't tell me he's using dark gold equipment. Imperial Thunder, did something go wrong with your skill? Let alone a player from an unknown guild, even the guild leaders of Ouroboros and the Star Alliance wouldn't be able to possess so many dark gold equipment," the robust-looking berserker named Lifeless Blade argued, laughing. "Brother Blade, you should know that this identification skill of mine is an advanced skill that I obtained only after completing a unique quest. When had it ever gone wrong before?" the ranger named Imperial Thunder replied earnestly. Lifeless Blade nodded, his expression turning serious. He then looked towards Shifeng, who currently sat on a stone chair, noticing that he was actually unfamiliar with this person. "Yifeng. He isn't an expert of Star Moon City. He should have come from some other city." After Lifeless Blade used an identification skill on Shifeng, he immediately knew that Shifeng was not a player belonging to Star Moon City. Lifeless Blade could be considered a somewhat famous person in Star Moon Kingdom. He had met many players before, and he had also met majority of the experts that could be found in the city. As for the experts he had yet to meet, he knew what they were called, at the very least. Even so, he had never heard of an expert called Yifeng before. And yet, I seem to recall hearing this name, Yifeng, from somewhere. Lifeless Blade drifted into deep thought. I recall seeing this name on the official forums before. I wonder if I can still find it now. Thinking so, Lifeless Blade opened the official forums and started searching for information relating to a player called Yifeng. At this moment, Imperial Thunder used eagle eyes on the guild emblem hanging on Shifeng's chest. Instantly, a shocked expression surfaced on his face. Yet, immediately after, that shock turned into great excitement. "Imperial Thunder, what happened to you?" Lifeless Blade asked curiously. It was his first time seeing Imperial Thunder produce such an expression. In the past, Imperial Thunder did not react with such intensity even when he saw a Lord-ranked field boss. "Brother Blade, he's a member of Zero Wing," Imperial Thunder said excitedly. "Zero Wing? Why would they be here?" Lifeless Blade asked curiously. Nobody in Star Moon Kingdom had not heard of Zero Wing at this point. After all, it was the first guild in Star Moon Kingdom to possess its own guild residence. Moreover, there were plenty of experts in its midst. Even the top-ranking player in Star Moon Kingdom was a member of Zero Wing. Not only was this guild extremely mysterious, it also had Star Moon Kingdom's chief forger providing them with equipment. Countless players wished to join Zero Wing. Unfortunately, the guild was only recruiting members in White River City. Unless players from other cities migrated there, they would have no chance of joining it at all. At this moment, Lifeless Blade had also found some information relating to Yifeng on the forums. Aside from finding out that Yifeng was the author of the White River City Guidebook, Lifeless Blade had also found some video recordings of Yifeng's battles. Of them, the video showing Yifeng's one-man battle against hundreds of Martial Union members was still ranked within the top 30 most viewed videos. The video had even been titled God-Ranked Swordsman's Instructional Video. So he is that God-ranked expert, Yifeng. Lifeless Blade felt greatly surprised at this moment. He never imagined he would get the chance to meet such a great expert. While Lifeless Blade and Imperial Thunder were watching Shifeng, Shifeng, with his extraordinary 5 senses, had long since noticed his 2 observers. The interest these 2 players emitted was very strong. In addition, the fervor in their gazes made it hard for Shifeng not to notice them, even if he wasn't trying. And here I was, wondering who was spying on me. It turned out that it was Lifeless Blade and Imperial Thunder. Shifeng glanced at his 2 admirers, sending a faint smile at them. Shifeng had been looking forward to meeting these 2 famous players for a long time now. Before they had even started playing God's Domain, they were already a relatively famous independent party. In the gaming world, they had even been called the Sharp Arrow Party. After they entered God's Domain, they shone even more than before. In the past, the team they had formed managed to successfully raid plenty of team dungeons that even the main force of first-rate guilds were helpless against. Meanwhile, the team leader, Lifeless Blade, had also been nicknamed the Ghost Raider. Brother Blade, such a chance won't fall into our laps a second time. Why don't we go get acquainted with him? Who knows, we might even become friends, Imperial Thunder suggested to Lifeless Blade. Chapter 285, Market Research. Chapter 285, Market Research. Imperial Thunder's suggestion sent Lifeless Blade into a light contemplation. Soon after, Lifeless Blade replied with a nod. As the saying went, another friend is another opportunity. If one wished to succeed in a game, an extensive network of friends was necessary. It was especially true when it came to friends who were experts. If we are going to hastily approach and interrupt him like this, we need to be careful with our words when we speak. After all, every expert has their own unique personality. Some might be cheerful, some might be indifferent, and some might be arrogant. It would be counterproductive if we happened to accidentally provoke him, Lifeless Blade whispered. Ah, of course I know about this point. Imperial Thunder laughed. You do, ha! Lifeless Blade rolled his eyes at Imperial Thunder. He then continued, do you still remember how you managed to provoke Yuan Fei, one of the top 10 rookies of the gaming world, whom we met last time? That was his fault for going overboard. He actually tried to roll for every equipment we got from that boss. Imperial Thunder still held a grudge against the player called Yuan Fei. When they had discovered a Lord-ranked field boss before, they had kindly sent Yuan Fei an invite to raid the boss together. After the boss died, the loot the boss dropped was distributed using the dice rolling system, as more than a dozen players had participated in the raid. It was also logical that every team member would only roll for the items they needed. Yet, contrary to custom, Yuan Fei had rolled for every single item the boss dropped. Yuan Fei's actions clearly stated that, if he could not use it, then he could still sell it. You could have just spoken up about the matter. At worst, we could have just stopped contacting him. There was no need for us to become enemies. Yet, you chose to pick a fight with him without even trying to talk things out. That's not how you make friends, that's how you make enemies. Yuan Fei is still holding a grudge against us even until now. Lifeless Blade felt speechless when he recalled the incident back then. Yuan Fei was one of this year's top 10 rookies of the virtual gaming world, and the Star Alliance had even offered him an annual salary of 2 million credits in order to recruit him. Meanwhile, just because their team had provoked that petty-minded Yuan Fei, they had received plenty of oppression from the Star Alliance, making it hard for them to mingle in Starmoon City. If not for the fact that Lifeless Blade was acquainted with the guild leader of the Star Alliance, this matter would never have been settled, and their team would have been forced out of Starmoon City long ago. I understand. I won't repeat the same mistakes, Imperial Thunder said in a soft tone. In fact, he, too, recognized the mistake he made in the past. However, it was not easy for him to fix his short temper. As the two of them quietly conversed while they made their way towards Shifeng, Shifeng had already grasped the general market trend in Starmoon City. Overall, the items sold here were cheaper than White River City. In White River City, a stack of hard stones could be sold for 10 silver coins. At this place, however, each stack was being sold for only 9 silver coins. The same went for whetstones. In White River City, each stack of whetstones could be sold for 35 silver coins, while at this place, it was being sold for only 32 silver coins. Only advanced whetstones were sold at the same price in both cities, whereby each stack went for 1 gold coin. On the other hand, mysterious iron ranked weapons and equipment sold here were at least 10% to 20% more expensive than the ones sold at White River City. As for secret silver ranked weapons and equipment, those were sold at prices 30% to 40% higher. Sure enough, with more players around, the resources available is also greater in volume. Even though mysterious iron equipment is such a rare commodity in White River City, here in Star Moon City, these items seem to be available in abundance. There is someone actually selling secret silver equipment as well. As expected of the capital city, the number of experts here is much higher than other cities. Just by looking at the items being sold at the auction house, Shafong could clearly feel the intensity of the competition at Star Moon City, with higher quality equipment in greater demand. It was also precisely this fierce competition that resulted in more experts being produced here. In order to survive in this city, one had to rack their brains and constantly think of ways to improve themselves, gradually climbing up the ranks of this prosperous city. Otherwise, what other explanation would there be for a precious secret silver equipment to appear at the auction house? It was simply impossible for guilds to sell any weapons or equipment that were of mysterious iron rank or better. After all, these items were strategic material for a guild. At most, they would sell the equipment produced by their own forgers. However, where would they find a forger who was capable of producing secret silver equipment? Even Shafong, who possessed plenty of support items, could not easily produce them. It went without saying that other forgers should only be able to produce bronze equipment, or at best, mysterious iron equipment at this stage of the game. Hence, the secret silver ranked weapons and equipment being sold at the auction house were definitely the offerings of independent teams. Meanwhile, their purpose in selling was simply to bolster their team's strength and obtain the funds necessary to cover their expenses. The number of independent teams that could obtain secret silver ranked weapons and equipment at White River City could definitely be counted using one's fingers. As far as Shafong knew, the only team capable of such a feat was the Holy Grail Knights that he had met by coincidence last time. On the other hand, there were a number of such independent teams in Star Moon City. One could just imagine the difference between the two cities. If I am going to try to enter Star Moon City's market, it seems that selling high-end equipment would be the most effective way to do so. At this moment, the fine gold-ranked dragon scale set equipment popped up in Shafong's mind. He felt that it might not be a bad idea to rely on the dragon scale set equipment to break into Star Moon City's market. However, his current forging standards were still too low. Cream Coco was also only an advanced forging apprentice right now. She was still in the midst of striving to get promoted into a true forger. Moreover, another condition needed to be met if Shafong wished to enter Star Moon City's market. Currently, Shafong's guild was based only in White River City. If he were to establish a branch guild at Star Moon City at this period of time, that branch guild would immediately be annihilated by the many large guilds of Star Moon City. Hence, what Shafong needed right now to enter Star Moon City's market was a shop to do business with. However, not to mention a shop, even if Shafong wished to set up a stall, he first needed to become a minor noble of Star Moon City. As for establishing a shop, at the very least, he needed to become a baron before he could do so. As expected, if I don't deal with this shop issue, I won't have any way of entering Star Moon City's market at all. After all, the auction house's 15% processing fee was simply too expensive. More importantly, placing items at the auction house was something only independent teams or players would do. If one wished to have any sort of development and earn large sums of money and fame, a shop of their own was essential. Hello there, friend. I am called Lifeless Blade. Seeing that you have come to the auction house, I'm guessing that you are here to sell some equipment, right? I am somewhat well known in Star Moon City, and I have plenty of sales channels. If you wish to sell your equipment at a good price and its attributes are good, I can lend you a hand with selling them, Lifeless Blade said as he walked over, a smile on his face. Selling equipment. Shafong took a look at his own getup, discovering that the weapons and equipment he had on him were far better than what anyone else present inside the auction house had. From an observer's point of view, he definitely would not have any demands for the items sold at the auction house. In which case, The possibility of him coming to the auction house to sell some of his unwanted equipment was very high. After all, with so many good equipment on hand, there were bound to be some obsolete equipment that he needed to dispose of. Immediately, Shifeng shook his head, saying, "No, you misunderstand. I'm just here to take a look." "Sorry, it's my fault for misunderstanding," Lifeless Blade quickly said in embarrassment when he realized that he had acted too rashly. "In truth, I'm not trying to earn some middleman's fees. I'm just trying to make your acquaintance. This here is a brother of mine, Imperial Thunder." Imperial Thunder nodded in reply, his mind still slightly dazed, completely mesmerized by the elegant appearance of the Abyssal Blade and the Demon Bane when seen at such a close distance. Dark gold weapons. Even the guild leader of the Star Alliance, a first-rate guild, did not possess such powerful weapons. Imperial Thunder wondered just what kind of attributes such weapons could possess. Just how much did they surpass the secret silver weapon he wielded? Seeing his companion constantly staring at the weapons hanging at Shifeng's waist, the drool in Imperial Thunder's mouth nearly overflowing, Lifeless Blade immediately clapped Imperial Thunder's back. He then let out an awkward laugh as he said to Shifeng, "Please excuse him. He doesn't normally act this way." Shifeng had been playing God's Domain for many years now, and his eye for people was still quite accurate. Naturally, he could tell that the two players before him did not harbor any evil intentions in their hearts, they were really just trying to get acquainted with him. Furthermore, from the stories he'd heard about Lifeless Blade and Imperial Thunder in the past, he had quite a good grasp on the two's personalities. They were definitely not sinister, villainous people. Lifeless Blade was the calm and silent type. As for Imperial Thunder, although he was brash, he was a man of integrity. "No problem. I can tell that Brother Imperial is a straightforward man." Shifeng waved his hand, laughing. "Since Brother Blade wishes to become friends, it would be my honor to oblige." Lifeless Blade's eyes immediately glowed. He hadn't expected Shifeng to be so easy to get along with, having such an easygoing attitude. Hence, the two quickly started a conversation between themselves. When they touched on the topic of combat techniques, Shifeng thoroughly shocked Lifeless Blade with his words. Meanwhile, Lifeless Blade finally understood why the public would acclaim Shifeng a god-ranked expert. After conversing for more than half an hour, Shifeng managed to obtain a more detailed understanding of the situation at Star Moon City, thanks to Lifeless Blade. "I've gained plenty from this discussion of ours. If not for Brother Yifeng, I'm afraid I wouldn't even know such a combat technique existed. This knowledge is simply priceless for dungeon raiding," Lifeless Blade said earnestly. He then retrieved a special tool from his back and presented it to Shifeng, saying, "This ring is the only item I can offer you as thanks. Brother Yifeng, please accept it. Otherwise, my conscience won't let me rest." Chapter 286, The Eternal Throne. Chapter 286, The Eternal Throne. Shifeng had not expected Lifeless Blade to be such a forthright person. Although Lifeless Blade had only taken out an ordinary-looking silver ring, Shifeng knew exactly how precious this item was. The reason being, not only had he seen this ring in the past, he had even owned one before. The ring was a space ring, it was a storage item. One could not judge it simply based on its mysterious iron rank. The space ring could store up to 200 slots of items. It was a very significant amount. It also did not impart any additional weight to the user, regardless of the number of items stored in it. However, this was still not the most important point about this ring. Instead, the space ring excelled the most when used during battle. Although it did not have many uses in a normal battle, when used in a fight between experts, a battlefield, or a boss battle, it could bring about game-changing effects. For example, if players wished to use magic scrolls or support items during a battle, they needed to first place their hands into their bags and search for their items before pulling those out. This entire process would waste much time. However, it was a different story if players possessed the space ring. With a simple thought, the item specified would instantly appear within the player's hands. The space ring was much more convenient than a bag. In reply to Lifeless Blade's offer, however, Shifeng shook his head and said, "This item is too valuable. I cannot accept it. Brother Yifeng, I am a man who never takes advantage of his friends. I'll feel extremely guilty if you don't accept it. Moreover, this ring is merely a storage item. It's not particularly valuable, so please accept it, Lifeless Blade said. Well, how about this? I have a favor to ask of Brother Blade. I wonder, how many reputation points does Brother Blade have at Starmoon City right now? Shifeng whispered, sighing. Lifeless Blade grew confused at Shifeng's question, failing to understand why Shifeng would ask him such a thing. However, he still chose to answer honestly. I'm only 30 points away from becoming a minor noble of Starmoon City. As the capital city of Starmoon Kingdom, the reputation points of Starmoon City was the most difficult to earn out of all the cities in the kingdom. Even if Lifeless Blade and his team were amazing, they were still a distance away from becoming nobles of the city. 30 points. Shifeng sank into deep contemplation. He thought to himself, that's not a lot, I guess. If he completes those several quests, he should be able to get those points. Must your favor require a noble to accomplish, Brother Yifeng? Lifeless Blade asked. Yeah. Shifeng nodded. Only by becoming a noble could one purchase a stall in Starmoon City. Also, exchanging of stalls could only be conducted between nobles of Starmoon City, in order to prevent players from taking advantage of any loopholes. However, Shifeng was a demon hunter. No matter where he went, he would still be treated like a noble. Hence, after Lifeless Blade purchased the stall, there would be no problems if he simply transferred ownership of the stall to Shifeng. In this way, Shifeng would have a stall in Starmoon City to officially sell his items. Originally, Shifeng had thought to complete a few quests in Starmoon City to increase his reputation here. However, it would not be easy to obtain 100 Starmoon City reputation points. He needed to invest plenty of time to do so. Meanwhile, Lifeless Blade had a trustworthy character, and it would be much faster to earn just 30 reputation points than to earn 100 reputation points. At first, Lifeless Blade felt ashamed for being unable to be of any help to Shifeng. However, Shifeng's next remark immediately sent him into a daze. I know a few high-level quests that can increase reputation points. After Brother Blade completes them, you should be able to become a noble of Starmoon City. After saying so, Shifeng proceeded to list out the few quests he had in mind to Lifeless Blade, withholding nothing at all. This shouldn't be a good idea, right? Lifeless Blade was nearly left speechless. Originally, he had fully intended to help Shifeng. In the end, however, he had been the one to receive help from Shifeng instead. Currently, the many guilds in Starmoon City were desperately searching for quests that could increase one's reputation, holding back nothing to do so. However, even when they offered a huge reward for any related information, they still had no luck in finding any. Yet, Shifeng had just casually revealed to him 4 high-level quests that rewarded reputation points, his casual remarks making it seem as if these quests were plain cabbages that could be found anywhere. Is the difficulty of these quests too hard for you to manage? Shifeng suddenly came to a realization when he saw Lifeless Blade's troubled expression. I still know a few quests that reward reputation. However, as their difficulty is much lower, the reputation points rewarded is similarly low. You'll have to complete at least 7 or 8 of them in order to accumulate 30 points. Lifeless Blade's mind was an utter mess now. He even started to suspect Shifeng was a GM, to actually know of so many reputation quests in Starmoon City. However, Lifeless Blade quickly dispelled this notion from his mind. After all, God's domain was controlled by the main God system. Nobody else was allowed to interfere with the game. Hence, the quests in the game were auto-generated by the system, and nobody should know about them in advance. Of course, if there was an exception to this point, then that would be the extremely mysterious beta testers. However, after God's domain was officially released, many settings and quests in the game were changed. In theory, the quests that were originally present during the beta test should no longer exist. Thinking up to this point, Lifeless Blade was thoroughly confused by Shifeng's identity. Just how was he able to know so many things? Are you wondering why I know so much? Naturally, Shifeng could discern Lifeless Blade's doubts. Ah! Lifeless Blade silently nodded his head, making no attempt to hide his thoughts. It's because I am a reincarnated person. I returned to this time from 10 years into the future, hence I know about all these quests, Shifeng said in full honesty. Brother Yi Feng sure knows how to joke. Lifeless Blade abruptly burst into laughter. I'll complete these quests as quickly as possible. After I've managed to become a noble, I'll immediately notify Brother Yi Feng. Lifeless Blade knew full well that everyone had their own secrets. Meanwhile, information on reputation quests would definitely be categorized as a top secret by guilds. Shifeng's willingness to reveal such precious information to him showed how much trust Shifeng placed in him. If Lifeless Blade still tried to probe deeper into the matter, then he would simply be too insensible. I'm telling the truth, Shifeng laughed bitterly. Ah, I know. Lifeless Blade nodded his head repeatedly, the smile on his face seemingly saying, I understand. Shifeng was left completely speechless. Although he had long since grown familiar with such a behavior, he still could not help but feel helpless every time he was faced with it. Why wouldn't anybody believe him even though he was telling the truth? Why must the world make an honest man like him tell a lie before somebody was willing to believe him? Shifeng was no longer able to make sense of this world. Soon after, Lifeless Blade added Shifeng as a friend before hurrying off to complete the quests. Meanwhile, thanks to Lifeless Blade, Shifeng now had a better understanding of Starmoon City's situation. After Lifeless Blade's departure, Shifeng hailed a horse carriage and headed to the War God's Temple of Starmoon City. He intended to continue carrying out his legendary ranked main storyline quest. The War God's Temple of Starmoon City was built beside the palace. From the outside, the building looked like a magnificent and majestic pyramid, and at the summit of this pyramid was a house-sized sunstone, which exuded a divine light. Be it day or night, this sunstone would shine brilliantly on the entire War God's Temple, and one couldn't help but admire this dazzling construction when seeing it. As the main branch of the War God's Temple, it had Tier 3 NPCs roaming around outside the temple itself, and even a Tier 5, Shadow Saint would not be able to penetrate the tight security here. Although this was not Shifeng's first time visiting this War God's Temple, it was still his first time coming to the 9th floor of the temple. The Eternal Throne. Just the NPC guiding Shifeng to this place was already a Tier 4 glory knight. In other cities, such an NPC would be an overlord-like existence that could cause others to tremble in fear. However, in this place, this NPC simply amounted to a guide. After entering the Eternal Throne, Shifeng immediately discovered one purple throne and 9 golden thrones suspended in the center of the room. On the sides were 50 silver thrones. Aside from the empty purple throne, every other throne was occupied by a person. Moreover, these people were all apex powerhouses of God's domain. A single step of theirs could send tremors throughout the entire continent. However, among all these people, only one of them had a real body, the others were simply phantoms. Sitting in their thrones, these powerhouses quietly observed Shifeng. Meanwhile, as the recipient of these gazes, Shifeng could not help but feel that his life was no longer in his hands. His body felt incomparably heavy under these stares, and his back was also already drenched in sweat. This was the imposing aura of a true apex powerhouse. It was not something Tier 4 classes could ever hope of equaling. As expected of one of God's domain's strongest powers. To think they actually have so many apex powerhouses in their midst. Shifeng was racked with emotion right now. Although he had played God's domain for over a decade, this was the first time he personally witnessed the War God's Temple's true strength. What an interesting young man. However, I don't believe a little guy like you can accomplish that quest. This is something that involves the fate of the entire continent, after all. Since it is so, let us give this little guy a test. If he passes it, I believe that nobody here would have any other objections, right? A test. This lady likes it. Let's go with that. If he passes the test, I'll throw in my vote of support. If he fails, well, he'll already be dead at that point, so no punishment will be necessary. How are we going to test him? Obviously, we are going to activate the 12 trials. Ha ha ha. The 12 trials. I have only heard of it before and only treated it as a legend. The last time it was activated was more than 900 years ago. I didn't expect that I would be so lucky as to witness it being activated in my lifetime. I must really thank you, little guy. I do hope you can last a few rounds, though. Let this old man here widen my horizons. Chapter 287, 12 Trials. Chapter 287, 12 Trials. The occupants of the silver thrones voiced their opinions one after another, merrily deciding how they should deal with Shifeng. Standing a short distance from the golden doors of this chamber, Shifeng silently muttered, "Crap. Don't players have any human rights?" However, Shifeng had no choice under the circumstances. The NPCs before him were all apex powerhouses of God's domain. Shifeng was merely an ant in their eyes. It would be fortunate if they even decided to give him a few extra glances, not to mention involve him in their discussion. At this moment, a youth garbed in white robes, one of the occupants of the silver thrones, moved and instantly appeared before Shifeng. Although this youth was simply standing in front of Shifeng, showing no animosity whatsoever to Shifeng, the formidable pressure Shifeng felt from him was much more overwhelming than what he'd felt from White River City's Magistrate Weissman. This white-robed youth was none other than Eucharis, the Star Moon Temple Lord of the War God's Temple, whom Shifeng had been instructed to look for. "Young man, we already know your reason for coming to this place. Although the Endless Abyss has indeed been unsealed, this is something that would have happened sooner or later. After all, no seal is eternal. In the face of time, everything is powerless. It is already good that the seal could suppress the Endless Abyss for hundreds of years. In the near future, we will join forces to suppress the Endless Abyss, preventing this matter from escalating. However, before we go and suppress it, we need to choose a person to collect the materials needed to reseal the Endless Abyss. However, this person must be a heaven-blessed person, and you just so happen to be one. Hence, we've decided to send you to collect the materials for us. Before we send you on your way, though, we need to first take a look at your potential. If you are no good, we will have no choice but to look for someone more suitable for the task." By heaven-blessed person, the NPC meant a player. In the NPC settings, heaven-blessed people were immortal existences, as even if these individuals died, they could still revive shortly after. Hence, heaven-blessed people were the best candidates for collecting the materials needed for the seal. "We have decided that your test will be the War God's Temple's 12 trials. You will be considered to have passed the test as long as you can clear 6 of the 12 trials. Of course, we won't make you go through the trials for nothing. As long as you can clear up to the second trial, you will be rewarded with 100 War God's Temple merit points. Also, the rewards will be doubled with every subsequent trial you clear. After you're done with a trial, you can use the treasury of the War God's Temple to exchange your merit points for treasures. You should know that the treasury of the War God's Temple contains the most treasure throughout God's domain. An ordinary secret silver ranked item only costs 200 merit points, while a fine gold ranked item costs 500 merit points, a dark gold ranked item costs 1,500 merit points, an epic ranked item costs 4,000 merit points, a fragmented legendary item costs 15,000 merit points, and lastly, a legendary item costs 60,000 merit points. If you have sufficient strength, you can even exchange for a divine artifact. However, that would require 200,000 merit points. While Eucharis was giving his explanation with a smile, Shifeng's heart was already pounding madly with excitement. Shifeng couldn't help but admit that a legendary ranked main storyline quest was indeed amazing. The highest ranked item Shifeng had seen before was only of legendary rank. He had only heard rumors about divine artifacts. He had never personally seen one before. Now that he had the chance to actually see one, his gains from this trip to the War God's Temple was already plenty. However, Shifeng knew his own limits. Even a legendary item was already a luxury for him, not to mention a divine artifact. Shifeng did not even dare fancy the notion of owning one. He would be satisfied as long as he could take a look at it. Just as Shifeng was imagining what a divine artifact looked like, Eucharis started chanting some incantations, while drawing complex divine runes with his fingers. After Eucharis finished chanting, a pair of large golden doors appeared before him. There were 12 scenes carved into the dazzling golden doors, and each scene told of a cruel battle. When the doors parted, a very ancient and violent aura gushed forth from within, as if there was a ferocious primordial beast housed beyond those doors. Young man, the 12 trials lies beyond these gates. Go ahead, Eucharis said slowly as he pointed towards the golden doors. Shifeng nodded in reply. Step by step, he slowly walked towards and beyond the doors, soon vanishing from the eternal throne. Ha ha ha. That little guy sure is brave. Doesn't he know that the 12 trials is the cruelest trial of the war god's temple? Eucharis, you're a devious bastard yourself as well. You actually used such a temptation against that little guy. Moreover, you've only mentioned the abundant rewards he could gain, but not the penalty for death. The merit points needed for the divine artifact. Even after saving for an entire lifetime, this old man still hasn't collected the necessary amount. If he wishes to obtain the divine artifact, at the very least, he needs to clear the 11th trial. Ever since the war god's temple was established, from ancient times until now, only one person has ever managed to do so. However, that great personage was a mighty god who had saved the entire continent in the past. This lady has read plenty of ancient texts relating to the 12 trials. According to the information in those ancient texts, the majority of the people that had entered the trial only managed to clear up to the 3rd or 4th trial. Meanwhile, the ones that were capable of clearing up to the 6th trial were as rare as a phoenix's feather and a Chilean's horn. Eucharis, your requirement for him sure is high. Collecting the 7 treasures is a matter of great importance. Without sufficient strength, how can he expect to gather all of them? Besides, we can't afford to waste any energy on a weak little ant. Just as the occupants of the silver thrones were having another round of discussions among themselves, one of the occupants of the golden thrones, who had remained silent throughout the prior discussion, finally spoke. This matter is decided. Just as Eucharis has said, the old monsters sealed within the endless abyss are becoming restless. We can't afford to waste too much energy on a single weakling. If he can pass the 6th trial, I will lend him a hand as well. As you command, my lord. The occupants of the silver thrones could not help but feel astonished when they heard one of the lords of the golden throne speak. They never expected that this great personage would take action as well. This was a fortune that could not be obtained even if one begged for it. Soon after, Eucharis waved his hand, summoning a water screen into the eternal throne. The water screen that was suspended in mid-air showed the image of Shifeng, who was currently facing the 1st trial. Shifeng's current location was at the summit of a precipice. Aside from the 100-yard or so plateau available to him, he was surrounded on all sides by deep cliffs. In addition, the winds here were extremely violent, and a single misstep could send him plunging into the endless abyss. Shifeng quietly sat on a platform paved with stone slabs. Immediately, he discovered that, aside from the weapons and equipment he had on him, everything else he possessed was unusable. The powerful frost grenades could only lie quietly inside his bag. Even the magic scrolls Shifeng had prepared beforehand were completely useless, and the same went for recovery potions. Instantly, Shifeng's combat strength had been reduced sharply. It seems that these trials are meant to purely test my combat power. I wonder who my opponent will be. Shifeng took a look at his surroundings and failed to discover any monsters. He then thought to himself in bewilderment, don't tell me the monster is invisible. Having thought up to this point, Shifeng immediately extended his 5 senses to their limits. Invisible monsters were not unusual in God's domain. In fact, some of the truly powerful monsters were even capable of serial teleportation. Meanwhile, inside the Eternal Throne, the big shots of God's domain were excitedly observing Shifeng's trial. After all, it had been close to a millennium since the 12 trials had last been activated. None of the occupants of the silver thrones were that old yet, so they were naturally very curious about the 12 trials. I wonder who will be his first opponent. Though there are no records about it in the ancient texts, I did hear that the creatures inside the 12 trials are all primordial beasts that are extremely ferocious. However, this is only the 1st trial. That little guy isn't even a Tier 1 swordsman yet, so the monster's strength should be barely within the Tier 1 realm. Look, something's flying over. Chapter 288, Continuous Clearance. Chapter 288, Continuous Clearance. Primordial beasts. In the gods' domain of today, these creatures were either extremely rare, or had long since gone extinct. They were beings that one would not normally see. Now that the 12 trials had been activated, Shifeng would also have the fortune of meeting one. If he were at any other location, it would be extremely hard for him to meet a primordial beast. Above the stage of the first trial, a blurred figure slowly descended from the skies, remaining unperturbed even in the face of the turbulent winds of this realm. This gigantic figure landed at the center of the stage, towering over the tiny Shifeng. With the upper body of an eagle and the lower body of a lion, this monster was none other than the king of the skies, a griffin. Griffin, elite rank. Level 20. HP 30 00030 000. I didn't expect a griffin would be so big. Just its wingspan alone is over 20 meters. Shifeng did not hurry into action. Instead, he took his time carefully observing the griffin. He was currently within a trial. The monsters in here were completely different from their counterparts in the outside world. Not only would the monsters inside a trial possess a large variety of skills, their basic attributes would also be much higher. Most importantly, their intelligence would also be higher. They would not follow a set pattern when they fought. However, the griffin did not provide Shifeng with too much time to think. With a piercing cry, the griffin flapped its wings, generating a violent gale. Instantly, 2 tornadoes over 3 meters in height swept towards Shifeng, and where the blades of wind passed, everything shattered. Using a skill right off the bat. As expected, this griffin isn't an ordinary monster. Revealing a faint smile, Shifeng's figure flashed, swiftly withdrawing from the attack range of the 2 tornadoes. Following which, he activated silent steps, instantly appearing behind the griffin. Before the king of the skies could react, the pitch-black abyssal blade turned into multiple streaks of black, slashing down at the griffin's wings. Like snowflakes, the griffin's snowy white feathers fluttered onto the now blood-stained ground. Aoo! The griffin let out an agonized roar, damages of over -400 points appearing above its head, one after another. The attacks that achieved a critical hit had even dealt over -800 damage. Immediately afterward, Shifeng followed up with a level 10 chop, his sword slicing off a large chunk from one of the griffin's wings, completely crippling it. Meanwhile, the griffin instantly lost over 1,900 HP from the attack. From this short exchange, the griffin had already lost 16% of its total HP. Furthermore, with one of its wings now crippled, it could not fly even if it wanted to. The gap in strength was obvious in a single glance. Against a Shifeng who had over 200 points in agility, a flightless griffin would only amount to a sitting duck. Following which, Shifeng constantly shuttled around the griffin, sending streak after streak of black radiance stabbing into the griffin's body. However, Shifeng only used basic attacks throughout all this. This way he would not be affected by the awkward movements consequent to using a skill, which would hinder his ability to dodge. Moreover, Shifeng's attacks were extremely accurate. Every one of his attacks would land either on a vital point of the griffin or at a joint that would affect the griffin's movements, making it even harder for the griffin to strike him. Although every hit Shifeng landed only caused around -400 damage, after a dozen or so seconds passed, the ferocious griffin fell. System: Griffin defeated. First trial completed. Rewarding 100,000 EXP and 5 free mastery points. Proficiency of all skills increased by 50 points. System: First trial cleared. Do you wish to start the next trial? The trial even rewards free mastery points. How wonderful. When Shifeng saw the rewards he received, a faint smile appeared on his face. After sheathing the abyssal blade and the demon bane back into their scabbards, he clicked yes to start the next trial. Although the monsters of the trial were indeed powerful, they were barely worth mentioning when compared to Shifeng's attributes and equipment. He cleared it, and with such ease as well. Not bad. Although he hasn't yet officially become a Tier 1 swordsman, his combat power is already at that tier. It is only natural that he is able to kill the griffin. If this continues, he should be able to get through the first 3 trials without any problems. From the 4th trial onwards, however, things won't be as easy anymore. That's right. The 12 trials would undergo a change in level once every 3 trials. The monsters would also receive a huge increase in combat power between levels. The 1st to 3rd trials will be basic level, while the 4th to 6th trials will be intermediate level, the 7th to 9th trials will be the advanced level, and the 10th to 12th trials will be the peak level. My bet is that the kid will hit his limit once he reaches the 5th trial. The people within the Eternal Throne were all apex powerhouses, and their eyes were well tempered by experience. After watching only one of Shifeng's battles, they could already make a relatively clear judgment. Indeed, just like the big shots of the War God's Temple had guessed. The stage for the 2nd trial was a Sylvan setting, and Shifeng's opponent this time was the moon-howling silver wolf. Inside a forest, this monster was an alpha predator. Similar to the griffin, the moon-howling silver wolf was a level 20 elite monster with 30,000 HP. Although it, too, was a tier 1 primordial beast, unlike the griffin, the moon-howling silver wolf was much stronger on land. Its physical attacks were much more powerful, and its reaction speed was also much faster than the griffin's. However, as if to replicate the scene from the first trial, Shifeng immediately activated silent steps and arrived at the hind leg of the moon-howling silver wolf. Again, similar to the time with the griffin, Shifeng slashed his swords down at the wolf's hind legs, crippling them and greatly reducing the monster's movement speed. Following which, Shifeng simply kited the moon-howling silver wolf with the blazing meteor. Before 30 seconds had passed, the moon-howling silver wolf fell. System: Moon-howling silver wolf defeated. 2nd trial completed. Rewarding 300,000 EXP and 10 free mastery points. Proficiency of all skills increased by 50 points. System: 2nd trial cleared. Do you wish to start the next trial? Immediately after, a golden glow surrounded Shifeng's body, signifying his rise to level 19. Shifeng then placed all 6 of his newly obtained free attribute points into strength, increasing the attribute to 180 points and activating basic destructive power, the hidden passive skill for strength. Now, Shifeng's bare hands were capable of destroying a bronze-ranked item. In other words, Shifeng's unarmed attacks could damage bronze-ranked weapons and equipment, reducing their durability, and eventually destroying them. Originally, Shifeng had intended to place all 6 of his free attribute points into intelligence. However, he wanted to increase his combat power for the sake of the trial, even if it was only by a small amount. Soon after, Shifeng clicked yes and started the next trial. The 3rd trial's monster was a blue-eyed spider, while the stage for the 3rd trial was a location completely befitting a spider inside a dark cave. Fortunately, there was no change to the blue-eyed spider's level despite Shifeng's rise to level 19. Similar to the previous 2 monsters, it was a level 20 elite monster with 30,000 HP. However, the blue-eyed spider was much stronger than the moon-howling silver wolf, though not in terms of attack power and movement speed. Instead, the blue-eyed spider had its highly potent venom and its tough and sticky silk. It also possessed superb eyesight. Even if its surroundings were pitch black, the blue-eyed spider would still be able to see clearly, as if it were daytime. Moreover, its eyes also provided it with a 360-degree field of vision without any gaps in between. Shifeng carefully looked around. Even if he possessed extraordinary strength, his range of visibility was limited to a maximum range of 5 yards. Meanwhile, the blue-eyed spider could easily spot any attempt Shifeng made to attack from a distance of 30 to 40 yards, making the situation extremely unfavorable for Shifeng. Interesting. However, Shifeng did not show any signs of panic. On the contrary, his lips curled up slightly. If it were any other player here, they might have to fight a bitter battle if they did not possess any supportive tools. Unfortunately, not me. Suddenly, a deep blue flame appeared in Shifeng's hand, lighting up the surrounding area. The scorching flame also caused the freezing temperatures inside the cave to rise sharply. Nevertheless, this was still not the end. The ice blue devil flame in Shifeng's hand quickly expanded and enveloped his body, completely covering him in a layer of deep blue flames. At this moment, Shifeng looked just like a god of fire, the flames on his body brightly illuminating the entire cave. Meanwhile, the blue-eyed spider's position had also been clearly revealed. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,